Hey everybody, welcome to Houston. We have a problem. It's our 19th show. It's a bunch of dorks sitting at home all nerdy. The last few times I made a show, people were betting on what shirt I was going to wear, and someone said, I bet he's wearing pineapples. So I finally wore pineapples for you today, whoever that was. So, pineapples. I think I've got a few shirts with pineapples. This is the first one I found in the mess of closets I have. Yeah, so how are you nerds doing sitting at home on a Friday night with me? Fridays are a busy day for me, so I don't get too much chance to read the news before I come in here. Catch up as much as I can. Sort of the descriptor in the video, we have talk about the U.S. debt ceiling that needs to be either raised or suspended, and as every time there's a Democrat in office, the Republicans are threatening not to raise the debt ceiling. And if they don't, it basically means destruction of not just the U.S. economy, but probably the global economy as a whole. As the U.S. debt rating drops, the value of those bonds plummet, and basically the assets under management of almost every sovereign wealth fund, pension fund, Social Security, hedge fund, bank, you name it, implodes with it. So the cascade effect and the absolute dire consequences as a result of not raising the debt ceiling, or at least suspending it for a couple of years, is pretty dire. Janet Yellen made a point to go in front of Congress today and basically say, pass this thing, you morons, or we're all screwed. And who knows? They've got until midnight on the 31st, I think, to get it passed. And the consequences are absolutely unimaginable. What will happen if we default and we don't raise the debt ceiling? It's one thing to have blow up some hedge funds and we make some money off of it, or there's a correction. It's another thing to absolutely just terminate the entire underlying security that almost every country on earth depends upon, which is U.S. government bonds. So you don't want to mess with those any way, shape, or form. Let's see here. Oh man, people have already popped in here. We got Matt Everts. Hi from Maryland. No questions. Next round of soda on me. Oh, thank you, Matt. And Dr. Stonk. Fin Watchdog tweet about July 30th Federal Reserve publicly releasing total derivatives of U.S. banks, including Citadel. Thoughts? Yeah, I've been talking with Fin Watchdog for the last week. Originally, he was going to write something up, and I was going to do a show on it for tonight. And then he decided, no. Because I think he was pretty scared that people were going to dox him and things like that. But I feel confident that no one's going to do that. That he's just releasing public information out there that other folks haven't gone through yet, and he's read all those documents. For those who don't know, I clicked the link to his Twitter thread in the description. I also included links that I forgot to put in on the last show that I promised to do about foreclosures, renters that could be facing eviction, and things. Those numbers that could be coming on the 1st. But the underlying point of Fin Watchdog's tweet thread is that there are certain laws that the regulators have put into place that, as a result of the 2008 financial crisis, when these derivatives that the banks were invested in and other groups were invested in were way over leveraged, 10, 20 times over leveraged. And so previously they would have to show once a year their books, and those books were probably pretty cooked to make it look like they're doing better than they were. The regulators have lost faith in the banks in this regard and are requiring them to show them everything and show them whenever they ask to show those books. And if they find that they're over leveraged, can force them to sell off bad investments until they meet a point for 4 quarters where they're stable enough. And so on the 30th, every single bank that does business in the United States of America, whether foreign or domestic, are going to have to show them these books and show exactly what those obligations are. And those obligations aren't just investments that they own, but also a margin that they give to hedge funds who trade under them. So I'm very curious to see what publicly is revealed about all these banks and their obligations. So if you need to know more, tweet Finn Watchdog and have him explain it to you in more detail. I'm still trying to wrap my head all around it. The stuff that he dug up that's in just like thousands of pages of federal code is pretty bonkers. And he's the person he was bouncing stuff off of me, and I was trying to check it, but he'd uncovered so much stuff in that thing that I can't keep up. And I guess he tweeted all day even more stuff, and I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet. So please check out what he's posted. It's pretty eye opening. Kyungmin, I might say this right. Kyungmin Yang. Can you talk about 1, what reverse repo is? 2, why the historical problematic? Yeah, why is it historical problematic these days? 3, why it can be linked to meme stocks. The reverse repo market. So there's the regular repo market, which is when hedge funds need money, they loan their solid securities, their treasury bonds to banks for money, and it's like usually short-term loans, day, a month, a week, whatever, and those hedge funds pay interest on it, and then they get everything back as soon as they pay their cash back. Reverse repo is when the banks are so the banks can either get liquidity from the Federal Reserve and sell treasury bonds to the Federal Reserve, or the banks can get rid of liabilities, which is cash on hand, and trade them with the Federal Reserve for treasury bonds. Right now, the banks are just getting piles of cash from the Federal Reserve, and the reverse repo market now is at $900 billion, somewhere around there. It's been kind of fluctuating around that $1 trillion mark for a while, and we've never seen it like that before. The last time we saw peaks like that were the 2008 financial crisis. We saw a big one happen in March of last year when COVID hit and the economy took a dump. But the problems are right now for the reverse repo market is that we're running short on treasury bonds, especially if the debt ceiling isn't raised, but the Treasury Department hasn't been issuing any of them. And the banks might get short squeezed on the treasuries market. They've been borrowing treasury bonds from the hedge funds. Normally hedge funds use them as collateral, but this time the banks are borrowing them and paying for those bonds and then selling them to the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve gives them cash, and they're hoping that they can buy back these treasury bonds cheaper and basically short sell them. But the treasury notes, the interest rates are dropping because people are scared the economy is going to crash. So they're leaving stocks and other securities and buying safe stuff like treasury bonds, which has caused the interest rate to go down and the price to go up. So the banks might get short squeezed on this. How it can be linked to meme stocks is that these hedge funds, they get cash from the banks by giving them their treasury bonds, and they use that cash to do deals. So whatever deals they're doing are probably using that cash, whether it's shorting, buying puts and calls, doing spreads, things like that on various stocks they own. And if the treasury bond market collapses because Janet Yellen's warning, like raise the debt ceiling, then the assets under management for the hedge funds, for the banks, for the Federal Reserve all collapse as well. And my guess, cash just kind of evaporates into the atmosphere as a result. And if we get a huge credit crunch, then no one can trade on margin anymore. If no one can extend their margin, then they got to start closing positions. If they have to start closing positions, that means selling off blue chip assets. Selling off blue chip assets causes the assets under management to drop, and which can lead to further margin calls down the line. It's a big chain reaction. So, hope I answered that. Oh, there was another thing I put on that descriptor, and I'm totally blanking on it right now. Let me just see if I can remind myself. Debt ceiling, foreclosures. Oh yeah, Merrill Lynch is talking about a 20% contraction. They released a press release on Monday that said they're expecting a 20% contraction across the markets as people pull back from investing and either, I don't know, lose money or put their money somewhere else. NSC made a new proposed rule. It's a very big one. It's like 300 pages long. Who was the person? I forgot to attribute the person who did the research on that, the read on that. It was it PB Jelly Games? I think it was. PB Jelly Games, at PB Jelly Games on Twitter. They read through all 400 pages of NSC 2021 Rule 010, and essentially what the rule is changing how hedge funds get liquidated. It's sort of like a sneaky backdoor liquidation, as I put it, which sounds kind of gross. I ate a bad pineapple and got some backdoor liquidation. And instead of, you got, the assets under management, you've got the huge leverage on one side of the margin. And if they get margin called, they have to sell this stuff to pay off this monstrous amount. Well, selling off those assets floods the assets in the market, which causes the prices of all those blue chips to drop. And if those blue chips drop, then the assets of all these other hedge funds also drop as a result. So what they're doing instead is they're calling it's like a loan. So you are a hedge fund. For every dollar you own, you owe $30, right? You're over leveraged to the hilt. You get margin called. You do not have the assets available to cover all that, what you owe. And so you're facing liquidation. The broker is going to be forced to sell everything you own to pay off what you can. So instead of selling that stuff off, there's going to be some institution out there that's flush with cash that will give that hedge fund a loan, and they'll take those assets and put them into the account of whoever's giving the loan. And then that loan will be used to pay off obligations. If the hedge fund defaults on that loan, then conveniently all those assets belong to whoever gave the loan. So essentially, it's a sneaky way of buying those assets in dark pool to keep the Dow from crashing as a result of a chain reaction of margin calls across the market. That's kind of how that rule seems to be looking. The thing about it is, once a hedge fund is forced to give up its assets and pay off all its obligations, how do they make enough money again to buy their assets back? They can't. There's no way. They've got nothing. And they still owe, 29 times whatever their original margin was. They can only pay off this much of their assets. They still owe all this part. So, then it's still going to fall on the banks to pay the rest. So this is just kind of a way of quarantining the Dow from the chain reaction of potential margin calls with this new rule. And I don't know if there was a date in there for when it would go into effect. I'm going to have to check with PB Jelly Games to find out. Okay, Lugs, happy birthday. It's always my birthday. Eric D, Houston sub since day one. Love your channel, man. Anyways, I still don't fully understand how reverse repo, RRP is a reverse repo, works and how it ties to all this. Please elaborate. Did I not just do that? So the reverse repo market is a way of putting liquidity into the market or taking liquidity out, depending on which direction it goes. If the banks can give treasuries to the Fed and get cash back, or the banks can give cash to the Fed and get treasuries, depending on how much that cash is seen as a liability. So there's Greg, I think his name's Greg Gammon. I should put a link to one of his videos. He does awesome explanations, better than I ever could, on reverse repo. I gotta find it here on my phone. It is George Gammon. George Gammon. I'm gonna put it right here. I'm from the chat so you can see. George. I can't type to save my life. RGE Gammon. So put his name in there in the chat. George Gammon. He does great video explanations of the repo market, the reverse repo market. If how I'm explaining it isn't working, go watch one of his videos. He draws pictures and they pop out of the screen and they do all sorts of things to help get your brain looking at what the repo market's doing and the reverse repo market. So, and he has one from 3 weeks ago that's basically like, hey, reverse repo is exploding. Is this the next economic collapse? And he puts into great words. So I recommend his video if how I've explained it, sorry, isn't quite tickling the brain waves for you. All right. What else was I think those are the big things I was going to talk about. Yeah. So Eric D, hit him up, and I'll watch his videos again and try to explain them in exactly the way he does. All right. All right. Okay, let's see what's on your brains for this Friday. I may have missed some big things to talk about. That I just raced home and put this link up and tried to get what I could to kind of focus myself. My Fridays are always just busy. Okay. All right. I'm on Cole Kelly's 70-inch flat screen. Oh. Okay. Where's the question? Give me some questions, people. So what? Okay. So AGM asks, so what happens to short stocks like AMC and GME? In this regards to the government not raising the debt ceiling, I think anything bad that happens to the general market is good for the holders of these short stocks. That's pretty much how it works. That's why they all have a negative beta. That means when the stock market goes up, our stocks go down. When the stock market goes down, our stocks go up. So we're constantly in flux related to the market. And a negative beta means that, like, the bigger the negative beta means the more difference it is between actions. So if the stock market's way up here, we're going to be way down there. If we're way up here, stock market's going to be way down here. So the worse the stock market does, the better, theoretically, we should do with our short stocks like AMC and GME and all the others that have been shorted beyond their float. So we're kind of hoping for that. I mean, it's weird things that, I hope the economy implodes so that I can buy a Lamborghini. But that's kind of where we are. And you know, like Brad Pitt in the Big Short, you know, we have to be aware that what might be good for us is going to absolutely destroy a whole bunch of lives elsewhere. So, you know, we could see implode of the housing market again. We could see pensions just kind of evaporate. We can see, local government funds just go up in smoke. If it gets coupled with the fact the debt ceiling doesn't get raised, then we're all screwed. We're gonna be like Lebanon and have a valueless currency and runaway inflation and electricity brownouts and all sorts of things. So it's pretty gnarly if and when the bad stuff happens. We just might get a big check. So that's where we'll be. Okay. Cancel Bubble, can you give some background on yourself? I found your channel. Sorry, I can't read very well. Can you give some background on yourself? I found your channel through most likely watching GME and AMC videos, but I don't know much about you other than what's in your about page and some videos. Okay, so for those of you who are new, I'm a scientist. I've got degrees in geography, geology, astrophysics, and space studies. I'm currently working on a master's degree in history as well. I teach math and science courses for a couple of colleges here in the Seattle area, and I run a geological exploration company. those are the big about me's. I got popular. I kind of tripped and fell into doing live shows like this recently. I wrote a Twitter thread that went viral on Reddit and about kind of explaining the mechanics behind the GameStop squeeze to the general public who was not involved. Because I kept having to explain it to my dad, to neighbors, to siblings, and over and over and over again. So I said, I'm just going to put what I keep having to tell them into words for everyone else who needs it. And that got the Twitter thread wrap got like 1.5 million views or something. And then it was posted several times, a different Reddit, to Wall Street Bets, to that stuff. And I was asked to come on to Josh Hamilton's show, The Gist, which is a podcast out of Northern Ireland, in April. And I said to kind of explain my Twitter thread all over again. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And then I got hundreds of thousands of views, and I got turned into memes, and it was very weird. So I was invited onto a couple more shows and did those. And then finally people were like, hey, man, do your own YouTube channel. So I was like, I've never done that before, but let's try it. And here we are, 2 months in, and 19 live shows and a few recorded ones. I'm hoping to do more recorded shows. And basically, I'll talk about whatever you guys want. I can talk about finance. I can talk about market mechanics. I'm not one of those chart guys. I'm not going to sit and point out, pennants and cup and handles and things like that in charts. Those aren't the things that fascinate me. What fascinates me more is kind of like the macro level effects upon markets, whether historical or regulatory or functionary. Just like seeing what pressures get put on things to make them move one direction or another, and how loopholes get exposed and abused, and then seeing what our response to that stuff is. Usually it's because the economy crashes big time because we didn't address a giant loophole and everyone's screwed. And then we're very reactive. We aren't very proactive. We like to, examples like to use is the Army Corps of Engineers in 2004 were like, hey, U.S. government, we need $30 million to shore up these levees around New Orleans. The U.S. government's like, no, we just gave a giant tax cut. Why would we pay $30 million to shore up levees? And then a year later, Hurricane Katrina hit, and it cost us $500 billion to clean up what those levees would have protected. Or COVID, if we had shut things down for 2 weeks, we could have probably stopped COVID in its tracks in the United States. But instead, we were scared about shutting down the economy, and we ended up having a lackadaisical economy for over a year and lost $16 trillion of GDP. So, we aren't very proactive when it comes to these things. We're very much reactive. So I like to talk about proactive things we could do. No one's ever going to do them. Instead, we end up watching the reactive results of those actions. So beyond that, people like to ask me about science and history and rocks and space, and it's fun to go on those tangents and explain those things to everyone. Okay. Hey, Marcos in Snohomish. Hello, neighbor. And Coles in Phoenix. All right. Just from Dex. Yes, I talked about the NSCC. It did pass, so I wasn't sure if it passed yet, and it's huge. PB Jelly Games is the person who did most of the DD diving into that and explaining how that works. I suggest hitting them up. I did my brief explanation on that. But yes, NSC 010. Okay. Bzz is asking, hey Houston, what if brokerages teamed up to expose the total amount of total shares that have been on their sites owned by customers for AMC GME? Couldn't something like that trigger a short squeeze? There has been in the past recalls that get forced when it's exposed that there's more shares trading than exist. I haven't heard of it happening recently, but in the Matt Taibbi article about short squeezes from Rolling Stone in like 2010, 2011, he talks about a couple instances where companies were trying to get the DTCC to reveal their computers to everybody to show how many naked shorts there were, and they weren't very successful in that. So they were doing share recalls to force essentially a squeeze on their stock. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. I don't know if the brokerages will team up and do that. They still have, they still work with a lot of these market makers who are sort of abusing us. And I'm not sure if they can get that stuff to agree, because usually it's the clearinghouse that knows all those things total, and they don't want to tell anyone. So, meh. Yeah. Hoshi Gaming asks, got any relationship advice for lazy girlfriends? No. I have none. No, I have no relationship advice that I can give that's worthwhile. My relationship advice is be comfortable with yourself before you date someone else. Don't be clingy. Don't be codependent. And don't be with someone if you don't want to be with them. Does that make sense? There you go. Those are my relationship advices. If your girlfriend's lazy, she might be bored out of her mind. She might be looking for some excitement. I don't know. Take her skydiving or something. Go climb a cliff. Learn how to race rally cars. Bring some excitement into that life. Some passion, some drive. Let's do that. Aaron Celentine, I believe the hedge funds will push the price to 300 to try and get people to sell. The bots are all over the place on YouTube. I'm not selling at 300. I'm here for generation wealth. Yeah, me too. It's going to go back up to 300, 350 before they try short attacking again. That's what they do. So expect to see that happen. And don't be surprised when it does. That's my 2 cents on that. Tribal TV just ate 10 gram edible. Let's feed his economic paranoia. There we go. All right. I look like Jonah Hill. Jonah Hill's like 5'3", and I'm 6'4". Jonah Hill looks like a mini-me version of me. A little round mini-me. Who I look like, and this wigs me out when I've seen like videos with him. There's a musician, electronic musician named Dylan Francis, and we are friggin' twins. We're built the same. We've got the same face, same mouth, same eyes. He has a widow's peak, whereas I just have a receding hairline. But it's eerie. I watched some video he was in, and my brain was like, I don't remember making this. that's how much we look alike. That's my true doppelganger, Dylan Francis. Okay, looking for questions. Bzz asks, if everyone transferred from other brokerages into Fidelity, couldn't that be enough to trigger the MOAS? Because the shares would route straight through the New York Stock Exchange. I don't know enough about that. We would have to see. I don't know. If anyone knows how that works, how that would work, I'm not sure. Does it get routed through there, or does it just get passed on like a dark pool? Like, oh, it's in this brokerage account, and now it's over here. I'm not sure. There was somebody trying to say, hey, sell everything in Robinhood and then buy it all back on Fidelity, but that's just going to go through pools anyway. Just from Dex, do you think Goober Grewal, the new SEC Director of Enforcement, is going to make a difference or more of the same? I only heard about that a little bit ago. I don't know about him, so I'm going to have to look him up and see what he's all about. I need to look up Gerber Grewal. I'll be honest, that sounds like a name from Game of Thrones. It's a Game of Thrones name right there. Yes, Gerber Grewal of House Glorbathian. All right. AGMS, the debt crossed 28.5 trillion. Does default mean MOAS happening or everything crashes? Yes. the economy is toast if we don't raise the debt ceiling. The thing is, right now with debt, a lot of people like to say debt matters, but government debt not so much. Especially when you are the world's currency. We are the standard currency for investment in the world, for oil, gold, you name it, all traded in U.S. dollars. Other nations use U.S. currency as a stable currency until they can generate one for themselves. A few years ago, Zimbabwe had runaway inflation that was just out of control. We're talking, by the time they printed a $50 billion note, it wasn't worth anything, and they had to start printing like a $50 trillion note. And so what they did was they just canceled all the currency and said that U.S. dollar is their official currency. And they did that for a few years until 2019 when they're finally able to like reintroduce their own fiat currency again. But other nations around the world, you know, they might have a currency, but they also use U.S. currency as a double. I think Liberia still does that. There's talk about in Lebanon of trying to do that. The problem is in Lebanon right now, a huge portion of their economy came from remittances from the United States back to families in Lebanon, and that wealth was stored in hard currency in their banks. And the banks shut off access to those families to get that money, and that's one of the reasons why the economy is collapsing in Lebanon is they don't have access to the hard currency. And without access to hard currency, you can't buy anything because the Lebanese currency is worth nothing. So, yeah. So if we don't pass the debt ceiling or at least suspend it for another couple of years, we're screwed. The U.S. dollar won't mean shit. U.S. Treasury bonds won't mean anything. It means municipal bonds won't mean anything, which means we won't be able to build elementary schools, bridges, roads, trains, airports, ports, satellite systems. The military is bankrupt. Like, it's just, yeah. So call your Congress people, especially if they're some of those fringe Republicans who are like, I'm not going to raise this, because federal debt doesn't matter. It doesn't. We can keep tacking on debt as long as inflation keeps the price of things going up. Interest rates on the debt is lower than inflation. So even rich people are filthy rich will take a mortgage on their home if the interest rate is below that of inflation. If you can invest your money and make 8% a year, who cares if you're paying 1% on the interest rate of a home, especially if you locked in a price that will grow by 15% year over year. So, you know, a lot of big projects get stopped in their tracks because people are scared of debt. In the 1960s, for $600 million, the city of Seattle could put in a subway, like 40 miles of subway system. People are like, oh, that's too expensive. $600 million is like a fart these days. You know, municipal governments like pick that out of their nose. So, you know, the idea that 50 years ago to spend $600 million on a subway system that would have moved hundreds of thousands of people 40 miles each day, and today we'd be like, well, that's like 1 mile of highway, so who cares? So whatever these projects are, they seem so daunting and crazy today. The inflation down the line means whatever debt we accrued making that stuff, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. Inflation has already basically erased that from our public consciousness. So, you know, we can take on debt for a long time, and that's what we do. That's what we do apparently. Anyway, okay. I'm already like so far behind on the chats here. Bird Bear 011111111 GME share on me. Not financial advice. Well, thank you, Bird Bear. You guys are so goofy. Okay, let's try to get back up here. All right, there's Eric D's. All right, there's the George Gammon thing. All right, that's where we are. All right. Jugger Monk says, I sold movie stocks for GameStonk because I couldn't afford GameStop. I bought AMC $8, sold at $45. Now I'm GME red and strong. Hey, good for you. That's nothing like getting 5x on your investment right there. It's always good for everybody. But remember, I think all these stocks are going to squeeze no matter who it is. All these stocks that are shorted are going to go when the time comes. That's good. I was on a show with Short the Fix, TMI, Mass Investor, and Trade Spotting yesterday, and I think Mass Investor is going to post it sometime tonight. It's a great video. I recommend watching it. We basically talk about how the drama between the stocks is unnecessary because we're all in the same boat. The DD might be a little different, but everything's shorted too much, and they're all going to have to buy it back eventually. And it's not just AMC, but it's Bed Bath & Beyond, Metamaterial, BlackBerry, Nokia, Rocket Mortgage, all these meme stocks you hear over and over and over and over again. They're all part of this. Sears Holding, a bunch of companies that probably went under and were shorted out of existence on the OTC, and are hidden now in these failure to deliver. What do they call them? What's the term for it that Knight Capital had? It was like stocks sold but no longer have, or something was the term. And they're putting like $2 billion a year in these shorted stocks that they've just printed and counterfeited into these accounts. It's what everyone's doing these days. It's all the hip kids are naked shorting. Okay. Dan Volman, threshold list AMC came off on 7.9. 5 tradings later, BlackRock Science and Technology Trust was added. Is this where the FTDs went? Possibly. The FTDs were likely done through swaps. So if you've got a failure to deliver, you have a debt. You owe whatever those shares are. And if you have a debt, you can use a financial instrument called a swap, which is where you trade your debt for someone else's debt. Go. And new ownership gets put on that debt. So if you trade your FTDs that you owe millions and millions and millions and millions of shares of something, and you trade it with this company over here, and they give you your debt, when you give them those FTDs, they put their name on it, and all of a sudden it resets, and they've got another 13 days, 21 days, 35 days, whatever it happens to be, and it starts all over again. So that is a giant loophole that they have to remove those securities from the threshold list and avoid being forced to buy them back. So now it's someone else's problem for 35 days, and then they're going to trade it with somebody else. And it'll go back and forth like that until basically they're stopped or no one has money anymore. People asking about MMAT dividend. We do not know what the MMAT dividend, the Metamaterials dividend is going to be, or it's not necessarily Metamaterials dividend, it's the Torchlight dividend from prior to them merging with Metamaterial. Torchlight was an oil company. They have hundreds of thousands of acres of oil fields, and they've been trying to sell them. And when they do, they're going to give that money to the folks who had Torchlight shares. So if you bought Torchlight prior to the merger, you get a share of preferred stock. That preferred stock can't be traded. It has no monetary value. It's just a placeholder for when Torchlight finally sells the last of their oil fields, and they can cut a check to everyone and replace those preferred shares with money. And we don't know when that's going to be. It might be soon. It might be Christmas. I don't know. But the T35 dates for all the metamaterial failure to delivers, I think, is like August 9th, somewhere around there. So yeah, so that's where we are. Kyungmin Yang, pronounced my name almost correctly. Oh, thank you. Woo! Your honest opinion on the homeless situation in Seattle and California after a decade of liberal policy failure. I don't think the homeless policy, the homeless policies are what are causing homelessness. My second recorded video, I believe it's episode number 2, is all about how to solve the homeless problem. The homeless problem is basically that we have upwards of 1.5 million people in the United States with psychosis, and 55% of the homeless are disturbed mentally. They have mental illness that can be considered psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, uh, uh, paranoia, lots of things along those lines. And they can't function in society oftentimes without medication, without treatment. And some of them will never function in society. So what we need is we need to be able to hospitalize them and get them treatment, or have a place that can provide them long-term care. In the 1960s, John Kennedy, he proposed community mental, I can't remember the exact name of the law, but it was Community Mental Health Act. And he wanted to get one bed for every 300 people in every community in America, because about 1 in 300 have psychosis. And if we can get those people treated in a hospital, then they aren't on the street, and they aren't, using resources, police resources, charity resources, and local municipality resources to deal with the health effects, the crime, and other things related to that. So if we can spend money on getting these people treatment, basically universal health care, because right now they don't have health insurance because they don't have jobs, and they don't have Medicare or Medicaid because they don't have homes. But if we can guarantee them treatment, then we can get them off the streets. And that goes for the remaining 45% of the homeless. A large portion of them are people that suffer from trauma, suffer from addiction, suffer from pretty horrible circumstances. They get young kids who are LGBTQ that get kicked out by homophobic parents and end up on the street. So if we can get those people the help and resources they need on the macro level across the entire country, then we won't have local homeless problems. The city of Seattle spends $200 million a year on the homeless, another $200 million of their $400 million budget for the police on dealing with the homeless, and then the local charities spend $900 million a year on the homeless. And it comes out to $108,000 per homeless person in just the city of Seattle. Now, if you just gave $108,000 to all the homeless in Seattle, you wouldn't have homeless anymore. So, why are we spending more money helping the homeless than it would cost to just build them all homes, right? Because the reason why you're homeless is you don't have a place to live. So, rule number 1, give them a roof. Rule number 2, give them a roof and give them the help they need to stay under that roof. We spend so much money on police and on charity that isn't going to solve the problem. It's just like a Band-Aid. And I think that the homeless problem across the United States, and it's not just in Seattle, it's not just in California, it has more to do with a national level of not treating those who need help. And the thesis of my show is we live in a society to make everyone's lives better, right? We got together, we formed communities, not to just become king of the castle and fuck all of you, but to make sure everybody, all those people get raised with that tide. And so that's my opinion on the homeless situation in Seattle and California and nationwide. Is we need to reopen mental health hospitals. And we had large-scale mental health hospitals in every state in the nation until Reagan became president and cut the budgets for it in 1981. And all of a sudden, the streets were just flooded with the mentally ill who had no place to stay. And that's the reality of the situation. You go to other nations, you go to nations in Europe, you might see a homeless person at the train station, but you don't see rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of tents all over downtown London. You don't see it. The city of London is 10, 11 million people, they have 12,000 homeless. Seattle is 500,000 people, they've got 12,000 homeless. So the ratio is way off. And a large portion of that has to do with the fact that the UK has a national health system. Okay. Looking for questions. That's threshold question. Yvonne C-Mac, ever been to Tasmania? We have some really cool Kilimanjaro jointed dolerite for you to check out. I have not been to Tasmania, although right before the pandemic, my little sister was living in Sydney, and my dad's stepmom went for a month to go visit her, and they went to Tasmania for a couple weeks and loved it. I wish I could have gone. And then the pandemic hit, my sister got homesick, and she's no longer in Australia, so I no longer have a couch to surf in Australia. So I may come calling for some couches to surf in Tasmania when I do make it. But I would love to check out that Dolorite. A hardcore New Zealand asks, why doesn't the SEC do anything about this manipulation in the stock market, Houston? I've thought about that. The three possible responses are: one, they're paid off. Two, they are doing something about it, but they just aren't telling us at the moment. Or three, they're terrified to do something about it. And that one might be kind of the leader, is that if the problem is so big and so systemic to the entire operation, that's like a big thing of Jenga, right? You have the blocks all stacked up, and to fix the problem, you've got to like pull this one out and everything goes. The SEC might be terrified to be the one to pull that pin and have the entire thing implode on top of them. And then they'll get blamed for it. They would rather see us blamed for it, the retail investors, than them blamed for it, even though it's their job to enforce and stop this stuff. Because it might have just grown and gotten too big for anyone to do about it. And now it's just like the runaway train. And you have to wait until it smashes into something and then clean up the mess. I think number 3 is kind of the most likely scenario, and that's why the SEC isn't actively doing anything. The SEC goes after these small-time people, no problem. You make $900,000 in a pump and dump, you're going to prison. You make $80 billion in a pump and dump, I saw nothing. Because everything is too big to fail. And when you're too big to fail, it means you should have antitrust laws break it all down. There shouldn't be a single investment group out there worth $400 billion and more. There shouldn't be banks controlling more than $1 trillion in assets. We should break them all down, just chop them to pieces, bust them up, and make, go from 6 big banks to 1,000 tiny banks, and start over from there and let them go from there. Hayden J, what do you think about the FAS as a hedge against market downturn? I don't know about FAS. There are a few things you can do as hedges. There's the VIX. There's getting puts on corporate junk bonds. There's a few things that you can do to work on that. I'll have to look up what FAS is all about, because I honestly don't know. Jeanette Salazar, Fidelity doesn't have payment for order flow. What if we all buy shares through Fidelity or Vanguard? Merrill Lynch, no payment for order flow. Would that make a difference on MOAS? It would. If you are buying your stocks not through the payment for order flow systems, that Robinhood, Webull, I think even Schwab uses it. Although you might have the opportunity to turn it off on Schwab. SoFi, Interactive Brokers, all those groups, they do the payment for order flow. We will probably see payment for order flow might vanish after this. And that would mean we'd be going back to a commission-based system, whether it's the commission-based system that we had prior, where you would have, $4 a trade, no matter what the size of the trade is, things like that. But right now, it's definitely obvious that the price manipulation is happening via the dark pools through this payment for order flow system. Yesterday, it was 72% of all trades of AMC were down the dark pools. That's criminal. We're not technically making those trades to the dark pool. We are saying, I want the stock. And then someone else goes to the dark pool and does some shady shit. So the price isn't reported to the New York Stock Exchange. And then we perhaps get our shares, but probably get some sort of naked counterfeit that's put in there. So yeah, I do support going to systems that don't use payment for order flow. Now that we've all realized what that means to us in the big picture when it comes to investing. Okay. Can't stop, won't stop, GameStop. Don't know if you ever watch any of Charlie's videos. The guy's a legend finding rules we've never heard about and breaking them down. I do like Charlie's videos. He finds a lot of stuff. My one issue is that is that he goes through some of these things and he goes through it so fast, I can't pick it up the first time. I have to rewatch, which is probably excellent for his counts on YouTube. But I do wish that he would have like a summary or explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old section. Because he throws out a lot of terms, and I don't quite pick up on some of them the first time. I got to look it up. I need like a glossary for some of the legalese he's reading and pointing out. But he does, if you've got a good legal brain, he does great videos and points out a lot of cool things. So I do recommend Charlie's vids. Dr. Ian Johnson, what do you think about the Fed exposing the derivatives exposure of financial institutions? That is Finn Watchdog's post from last night and this morning. Awesome stuff. Go to his Twitter and have yourself a read. It's still going. He's still posting things in there. I mean, he read like 1,000 pages of law to pull all that stuff out. It's pretty incredible. So for those who just caught up or just jumping in, on July 30th, the Federal Reserve is going to publish the exposures, the equities and derivatives and liabilities of every bank that does business in the United States, supposedly on July 30th. Excuse me. I wolfed on a dinner right before I got on here because I was just starving. And that should give us an idea of what their liabilities are right now. And because we only get this like once a year thing from them, but the new rules are basically anytime the federal government says, hey, what's happening in your bank, they gotta open the book and show them. Whereas before it was the bank would produce this perfectly curated thing that says everything is all fine, see? And then they would go back and make it look even better for the next year. And now it is, you, show me your books. And they go, here you go. And they have no time to doctor it. So that's the future we're looking at as far as that's concerned. And I think we're going to see in the next couple of years a big tightening on regulations of the markets. Which means we'll have another political party campaign on deregulate the market, and it's going to start all over again. So, yeah, every time we deregulate the market, we bite ourselves in the ass. Enron fought so hard to deregulate the electrical grids across the country, and then what happened to them? They evaporated and disappeared in 2 years into nothing. Poof, and then everyone went to prison. So, like, the regulations were keeping Enron from going to prison and going bankrupt. They're like, no, those regulations, get rid of them. And then they went, and it was like a bunch of sheep escaping the farm or something. Rable Obuli. Hope I said that right. What are the chances Wealthsimple screws us during MOAS? Could I really change my life with only XX shares? I don't know enough about Wealthsimple because that's Canadian. I do know that they do some weird things when they trade US stocks that are kind of similar to Europe. But I think you still got like your proxy votes and things like that for GameStop and AMC. You have to fill me in. Is Wealthsimple a brokerage that shut down trading of the meme stocks in January? I don't know. You guys may have to tell me. But I think Wealthsimple kind of works in that whole payment for order flow system. And if you guys don't know, the payment for order flow system, when a stock is going through the roof and isn't necessarily as a result of margin calls, but might be from FOMO, like driving the price up. If they don't turn off their payment for order flow, they can lose a fortune. And that's because the payment for order flow is all about shaving fractions of a penny off of the shares of stock. So you want to buy a stock for $100, they go in the dark pool and they find it for $99.99, and they buy that stock and give it to you and keep the penny. That's kind of the payment for order flow system in the nutshell. If the stock is flying high, right? You may put an order in for $100 for a share, and then they give you this fake share in your account while they wait for the stock to drop, and it might never drop. So they might be waiting and waiting and waiting, and all the time they're waiting, the price is just going up, 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 up. And if they have to go in and buy at 150, they just lost 50% on that entire deal. So the reason why Robinhood shut off trading for AMC, for GME, for COS, for I can't remember all the ones they traded. There's like 10 stocks they stopped trading on. It was because they had to spend a whole bunch of their margin buying these shares at prices in excess of what the customer was bidding, because the price was just going up, 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 up. And there was no amount of time they could wait to actually find this share at a cheaper price. So they just turned off trading because they were going to lose billions of dollars and face margin call on their entire operation. That payment for order flow is on margin. So unless those brokerages turn off the payment for order flow, they can lose a fortune if there's another like FOMO squeeze like we saw in January. Okay. Also Putineska. Oh, Putineska. You are a wily girl. Always getting me in trouble. Bart Sears asks, I've been here since February, as you know. YouTube has become a place for a ton of garbage. How much damage can that do to the original movement of AMC and GME? I don't know. I think people kind of do their thing and suss out who they like and who they trust. I mean, I certainly have my detractors. There's a whole group of people that fucking hate my guts. But nothing I can do about that. On Twitter, if they come at me, I just say, hey, let's fight. And then usually they go, what? Wait, what? Why? I'm like, well, no, we're not going to solve anything, so let's just kick the shit out of each other. And then they just kind of go, oh, and they disappear. It's easiest way to deal with them. But there are folks, you know, the hedge funds, the short hedge funds, it's cheaper for them to spread FUD and to attack than it is to actually pay off their obligations. If it costs them a few $1 million here and there to buy Reddit accounts, to create bots for Twitter, for YouTube, etc., to pay someone off to make slick videos about how the stocks aren't going to go in everywhere, they've already covered. It's cheaper for them to do that and to draw this out than it is to ever close their obligations. And I do think that for the most part, people in the community have a pretty good nose for who is feeding them, you know, too much confirmation bias and who is feeding them too much doubt. And they'll gravitate towards the person that they trust, and you know who I try not to sugarcoat. That's my thing, is that I try to always go back to like a Godonkin mental experiment and picture whatever it is someone's trying to explain to me and see if that works in whatever experiment I can design in my head and run through. Einstein called those Godonkins. And if it doesn't click, then I try to just avoid it until it makes sense to me. And a lot of people, they just sort of run with this stuff, and I've made that mistake before. I do have a problem where I'll read a headline and then stick it in my brain and never actually get to the point where I followed through. I like file delay. I'll read that later, and then I bring it up on my show, and someone's like, "Show me the source for that." I'm like, "It was a tweet I read 10 hours ago, and I don't know who wrote it, and I got to go through this whole search engine thing and try to find it." So I can trip up like that too, but I don't think it will damage the AMC or GME movement, because the movement is buy and hold. That's it. That's the entire movement. It's not that hard. It's not hard to buy and hold at all. CD says, thank you for your live casts. You are always appreciated. Well, thank you, CD. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. My roommate is like always telling me, Houston, remind people that if they want their questions read fast, to send you a super chat, because it pops up in color and I see it, And sometimes I start talking too long and they disappear and I have to go find them again. But I will always answer the super chats when they pop up. And otherwise, I got to go down the chat here and try to see. I'm going to show you what it looks like on my end, just so you can see the chats here. Let me go video capture device. I go there, screen capture, that. So, okay, so you can see the chat here, this guy. So if I scroll down too far, I get down here, all of a sudden it does this crazy reset and it like puts 500 more chats in there, and then I got to go back up and figure out where I was if I scroll down too far. So I'm somewhere like up here. I think I'm a little bit below Bird Bear, I believe. Or am I above Bull Bear? Bird Bear. So I'm way back here somewhere. So that's what happens with the chat as it stands now. And now I gotta get back to the camera. There we are. Hello. All right. So when I'm dealing with the chat, I wish there was a way I could be like, I could put a dot next to it, like I read that one, and then it'll mark it for me much more easily. The Diaz said let it squeeze to 300, then short it again. Wouldn't that just reset everything? Also, do you believe this is a managed squeeze by government? I do think that there is a play by certain hedge funds to drive the price up to 300, 330, and then short attack. And then drive the price up again, and then short attack. Whether those are the same folks who originally shorted it at like $10, $15, $2, I'm not sure. I do wish there was more transparency, which is why a blockchain would be awesome, because we could actually pinpoint who exactly is doing that. But right now, a contact of mine, his theory was that the 170 to 190 range is like halfway between 350 and 40, where it was in February. And that's a way that they can, if they keep it in that range, they can avoid margin calls. If it happens to go up to 300, they can short attack it back down again and kind of remain in that middling range so they won't face margin calls. So that's kind of how it makes sense to me that could be the case. Whether the government is managing it or not, I don't think so. I think the government, if anything, is just going, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to let the Fed and the big banks kind of deal with this for now. I'm not sure how the federal government would manage it, because so much is being done in dark pools, and that's just, they don't even have oversight over the dark pools. So how are they going to manage what's happening there? I mean, really, it's going to take subpoenas by the SEC to even see what's happening in those dark pools. Nick Callis asks, do you see GME and AMC squeezing together independently? I think when it happens, everything's squeezing. I originally had joked that, when I bought my GME shares, it's like, when GME squeezes, I'm going to buy a whole bunch of AMC stock, and then that will squeeze too. And then I started looking into how many companies have been shorted, and the list is just impossible. Like, we don't even know of half the companies that could explode during the MOAS. But I think when the margin call happens on the assets under management of somebody and they got to buy the leverage stuff here, when they don't have any assets anymore, that means there's an obligation to cover the rest of it because there's no assets to back it up. So they're going to have to buy everything. They're going to have to close every position they've ever had. And when they get bankrupted, it's going to fall to the prime brokers and to the investment banks. And when those go bankrupt, it's going to fall to the DTCC's insurance programs. When those go bankrupt, then the Federal Reserve is going to have to dump a bunch of money back into the banks, and then they're going to have to keep paying until all this stuff is closed. And I think it's all going to happen. It's going to be happening for 100 stocks across the board, maybe more, when it happens. So no, I don't think they're going to squeeze independently. I think they're all going to go at once. Okay. let's see here. In Olympia, Washington, we get a lot of homeless, mentally ill, and addicts put on Greyhounds from Portland or the greater Seattle, greater U.S. dropped off here. That happens a lot. People don't realize how much that happens. When I was going to school in the Big Island, there were 2 weekly flights from ATA Airlines that went from San Francisco to Hilo. And every single one of those flights, I'd pick up my roommate who lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he'd take that flight. And it'd be like half tourists and half absolutely out of their mind homeless people that someone in San Francisco was like, hey, buddy, here's a plane ticket. Shove them on a plane and send them to Hawaii, because they get off the plane, there's no way to get back. Haha. It's like one of those like Venus flytraps. Just got them, homeless person stuck inside. Go eat some guava and papaya and call it good. And so the population in this certain area called Puna on the jungle on the Big Island is absolutely knucking futs. We call them punatics. They're living in like shipping containers and cardboard boxes in the jungle, and that's literally like the resources aren't available to give them the treatment they need. So what do? Make it somebody else's problem. And the community of Yakima in Washington got busted driving people they just let out of prison to under a bridge in Seattle and letting them all out. That's from like 5 counties away, 200 miles away. And there's like, well, you're a problem. You got no home in Yakima. I'm just going to leave you in Seattle. They've got services. Deal with it. That happens a lot. That's another big reason why we just need to just give people the treatment they need and give them the dignity and homes. And it's so much cheaper and easier on everybody. Hoshi Gaming, thoughts on OCD and treatment for it? Any good companies invest in after MOAS to help cure it? I did a year-long research on it and would like to know your take on OCD. Man, I know one person I would consider OCD, and it was a roommate I had many, many years ago, and I don't know what the cure is for it, honestly. I think it's behavioral therapy, maybe even exposure therapy. I'd have to look deeper. I don't know of any companies that are taking it on this. I think there's drug regimens they give people, but I think OCD is connected, like parallel or connected to Tourette's, isn't it? So a lot of people who have tics and twitches, oftentimes they also have obsessive compulsive disorders, and it has to do with firing in the brain. And some people, those OCD traits, those Tourette's type traits, they can result from trauma. A friend of mine had Tourette's that involved her doing this kind of gas. It was like, and she couldn't help it. And it just happened every once in a while. And it occurred after her mom died when she was young. She was totally normal. Her mom died, the trauma of that, and something in her brain has this Tourette's response now. So I would be interested to see if there are companies out there that do research on it. It can be completely debilitating for people. It can result in like germophobia. So you're like Mr. Burns living in the clean room. It can result in spending all your time to make sure the tassels on the rug are exactly lined up, and if they're off in any way, it's absolutely horrible. I had a math teacher in high school, Mr. C, and Mr. C he was a robot, and he was very OCD, but he was functional, and everything in the classroom was lined up perfectly. And if a desk was over by like half a centimeter, he would come and move it exactly back where it should be. The amazing thing about him is he would teach math class, and he would write behind him on the chalkboard while talking to the class, and then pass over to his other hand, continue writing the equation on the board behind him. Absolute wizard. And then we'd see him out like mowing his yard in his Speedo, and it was just the weirdest thing. But there's people who have turned their OCD into some sort of weird type A superpower, but I don't know about too much research into that. That's something that I'll have to dig deeper into. I'll have to find some journal articles to absorb about that. Okay. Raw Medical. Robert Carter's asking about that. I don't know about Raw Medical. I'm going to put that on the Raw Medical. Okay, it's on the list. I'm going to have to read that. So I can't give you an answer on that. Like I've told people, I've got enough brain capacity to really focus on a couple of stocks at one time. And when it gets beyond that, I can know a few socks really, really well, but I've got I got, it's hard for me to focus on more than that. So Robert Carter, I'll look into that for you. Okay. Michael Calibri, weren't they doing weird invasive experiments mentally ill people in those institutions? Yes, they were. They were doing those. And one of the things about Kennedy's proposal for community mental health systems was the way it was set up prior was you had a couple of large hospitals in each state, and then all the people who needed treatment would go to those hospitals and be so far away from their families that there was no accountability. And so what Kennedy wanted to do was bring those facilities to every town or county, depending on its size, so that people had access to their loved ones while they're in treatment and living in these facilities. And if they have access to their loved ones and they get visitation and quality time with their families, it's harder for that stuff to go unnoticed. One of the things I would like to see is every single person who is a licensed therapist or counselor or mental health expert in every state gets automatically put on a sort of like a national guard of mental health experts. So you have to do 2 weeks a year on either an intake board or an outtake board. If you're on the intake board, it might be 7 or 10 of you at one of these facilities, and for a week, as they bring people in, you interview them and figure out if it is true they need to be inpatient treatment, or if you're an outtake board, they go in front of you, look at the treatment they've had, you talk with the patient, you talk with the doctors, you talk with the nurses, you maybe interview other patients, and see if that person is ready to move on or if they need further treatment. It would bring fresh eyes to all these things, and it wouldn't keep one doctor with all the power, which is what happened with a lot of these hospitals, which is someone would check in and that doctor would get paid money to do experiments on them, would get paid by families to lock away the heirs of fortunes so that, you know, the scion of this giant company would be declared mentally handicapped and they'd give him a frontal lobotomy, and then, you know, someone else with access to all that power. Weird things happen like that. So it's all about accountability and having checks and balances. And I that's what they do in other nations is they have other systems where people not only get treatment, but they also make sure they don't lose their lives to these institutions, that they're given the opportunity to live a life they need. So what was her name? Drunk History did a great video on her, several videos on her. She was an investigative journalist in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Oh, her name's coming to me, but she went to undercover an institution in New York and expose them for the abuse they did on their patients. And then, you know, she wrote an article and it sold tons of newspapers for like the New York Daily News or something. If someone knows the name, pop it in there. I cannot remember it for the life of me, but her story is really cool about exposing that behavior. Okay. Man, there's a lot of there's a lot of good talk going on about mental health in the chat there. It's something we all face. I mean, we all have moments of crisis where we feel out of our minds, and you know, there is a point where we can at least either we know somebody who they're broken and they need treatment or they need help or they need care, and we might not necessarily have the expertise or the power to give it to them. I can think of a classmate of mine that you know, in his early 20s, full on schizophrenia. Incredibly talented artist, brilliant, caring person, and then, you know, became a paranoid schizophrenic. And I didn't know. And I invited him to a 4th of July party, and I was like, oh my God, this guy needs to be institutionalized. And his family couldn't do anything about it because the way the laws are written now is A, there's no institutions, and B, you can't institutionalize somebody even if they're out of their minds against their will. So, you know, the laws need to change, and the laws that were pushed by Reagan in 1981, we've got to get rid of them. We got to change them and make them for the better, so that we have a way of treating these folks. Okay. Boss is asking about my sister. I have 4 sisters. I have 4 sisters, 2 brothers. I got a lot of them. So there's a lot of us out there. I'm somewhere in the middle. There's like a 30-year spread between the oldest and youngest, or almost 30-year spread. So there's a lot of us in our family. I'm not even the brainiac in the family. There's people way smarter than me. I have siblings that are, one sister speaks like 11 languages. Another one has, 4 master's degrees and is a captain in the Navy and a tenured professor. And I'm a schlub compared to them. All right. Web Twerp asking if I've ever gone to Owl and Thistle downtown. I have gone to Owl and Thistle downtown. I watched a guy get dropped in his head by a bouncer there that ended up in a giant lawsuit. But for some reason, I was never called as a witness. But yes, I've been to the Owl and Thistle, Irish pub in downtown. Right below another Irish pub called Fado. So it's like Irish pub, and then below it, another Irish pub not related to each other. Okay. Sully, 69. T35 for MMAT is August 16th. Thank you. August 16th. I knew it was some in those first couple of weeks of August. August 16th. There we go. Thank you for popping in there, Sully. Yeah, the failure to delivers report got published for the end of June. In the last 2 days in June, there was like 5 million failure to delivers on on metamaterials alone. So we have no idea what it is for Torchlight. Absolutely bonkers. Okay. Number letters ask, tell us more about Yellowstone and what we should do if it ever erupts. Oh boy, you guys ready for some Google Earth? Let's Google Earth. Okay, there's Google Earth right there. Da-da-da. Wait for it to open. And I gotta click on this thing. Video capture device. We have to go to screen capture. There we go. Okay, cool. That's that. I need to now go like that. Oh. Okay, so there's our good old North America. If we go down here, so I'm going to go to Hawaii first. Before I talk about Yellowstone, we're going to have to talk about hotspot volcanoes. So Hawaii is a great classic hotspot volcano. Sitting stationary in the mantle is some sort of hole that comes up through the earth and pops out this magma and makes the volcanics happen. And the Pacific plate moves to the east, to the west from the east, and the hotspot stays the same. So it makes a new island, and then the old island moves on. It makes a new island, the old island moves on, like a conveyor belt. Like imagine like Hershey Kisses being dropped onto a conveyor. That's kind of like how these islands get formed from beneath. There was a hotspot 16 million years ago out here in eastern Washington, eastern Oregon. This created the Columbia flood basalts. And for millions of years, 200,000 square miles of basalt, thousands of feet thick, flood this entire region. And this is before the Cascade Mountains existed. So there was an ocean. The Pacific Ocean was around here before the Olympic Mountains. So none of this land existed. And all this essentially is lava is flowing from the near shore off the continental shelf. Now, the Pacific plate is moving everything, or North American plate is moving everything this direction. So everything's moving this direction, but the hotspot volcano stays in the same place. So as the hotspot volcano moved, or stayed in one place, and the continent moved west, we got this chain that craters of the moon in Idaho. It's all Idaho right here. More flood basalts happened, and then there came a point when it got through too much continental shelf, and that the rock in the continental shelf is like harder to melt. It melts at a lower temperature though, and it's kind of tacky and sticky and viscous. And I call it herky-jerky lava because it's really hard to get like movements of lava through it. And that's where you get Yellowstone. So Yellowstone is in this region here. The Yellowstone caldera. It's essentially this zone that's most of the park. And this is the supervolcano. This is the volcano that was the hotspot years ago when there wasn't much of continent to push through. And now that it's got 100 kilometers of continent that has to, the magma has to move through, it allows for more time for groundwater to seep in, and groundwater likes to go and burst into steam because all that water is now under pressure. And when this volcano erupts, it erupts huge. It does it in a giant explosion, not nice flowy lava like you have in Hawaii. Now, this volcano, what is this? If you imagine where my mouse is swinging around is basically one volcano. It looks like a whole series of mountain ranges. It's really just one volcano. That's why we call it a super volcano. And the amount of material that will shoot out of this thing is ridiculous. Mount St. Helens, we go over here. All right. So we go over here, and we have Mount St. Helens right here. So Mount St. Helens, it's a tiny little mountain. You know, it's maybe 5-10 miles across, 9,000 feet tall. We zoom out, and we try to compare that dot with this entire region right here that is a volcano that could fit, I don't know, 100 or 1,000 Mount St. Helens inside of it. This thing is just monstrous. It erupts about once every 600,000 to 1 million years. And when it does, it produces 1,000 cubic kilometers of ash. When Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, it produced 1 cubic kilometer of ash. So this thing is 1,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens. It's enough material to pump out that would basically block out sunlight for a year or two across the entire northern hemisphere. So if Yellowstone goes boom, my immediate advice to you is get the hell out of the northern hemisphere. Hop on a plane, get in a car, get in a boat, and head somewhere down here and live out your days somewhere in South America, somewhere in, I don't know, Bali, somewhere in the Southern Pacific, because it's going to be miserably cold in the northern hemisphere for quite a few years. Plants are going to be able to grow anything. Everyone's going to starve to death or freeze to death. It's going to be awful. The kind of sensationalized movie to watch is Super Volcano, which was a Discovery Channel movie. I recommend it. It's a little sensationalized, but they do hit home that like you're screwed if this volcano erupts. In the United States, the two major super volcanoes are Yellowstone, and then in California is Long Valley, which I've always have a hard time finding Long Valley in here, I believe. There's Mono Lake. So this is another super caldera. Someone who's in California might point to me and say I'm circling the wrong spot. I'm sorry if I am. But they thought Long Valley was going to erupt back in the 70s. There's a bunch of magma intrusion, and but ended up subsiding and not doing it. There's other super volcanoes in the world. There's a hotspot volcano in Iceland that's a super volcano. Its name is one of those Icelandic names that for an English tongue is absolutely impossible to pronounce. In Italy, come on, there we go. In Italy, where Naples is, we have Mount Vesuvius. This entire region here is a super volcano in Naples. So if this one were to erupt, you could see like 1.3 million Napolitanos all of a sudden becoming unwitting astronauts as they fly into space at the speed of sound. So there's super volcano there. Some other big ones. There's the Tambora volcano in Indonesia, which I'll be honest, I'm not going to be able to find. Somewhere in Sumatra, somewhere in there is the Tambora volcano, and I don't know where it is in there. But that one last erupted about 70,000 years ago, and they think was one of the things that forked humans from Neanderthals and allowed humans to take over, was the weather change that resulted from that volcano going boom. Okay, here's your quick Yellowstone volcano lesson. Let me get back to my face here so you guys can all look at my loveliness. Gotta adjust, and I'm flying. Look at me, I'm flying around, Mom. Okay, there we go. So super volcanoes are gnarly, and they erupt every few million years, and we may have ice ages that are the direct result of those volcanoes blocking out the sun from one hemisphere or another, and changing the entire climate. The Toba volcano, which erupted in 1819, I think. They call it the year without a summer. It produced 20 cubic kilometers of ash, so about 20 times what Mount St. Helens did, or Pinatubo in the Philippines. And it essentially made it so the temperature in the northern hemisphere never got above about 40 or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And it snowed in the East Coast in June and in July. So those volcanoes can make some big damaging changes when they feel the need to. Okay, so number letters. I hope I answer some questions there for you. All right. Did I miss any super chats while I was chatting, while I was saying that stuff? Let's see here. Leaky Mountain. Oh, that's. What would you know about harmonic tremor? Don't be a smartass, Jake. Leaky Mountain is my buddy Jake, who's a tour guide in Hawaii who takes people on tours of the volcano. If you need to know anything about volcanoes, that's your man right there. He knows all about it. Yeah. Harmonic tremors are what happens when magma intrudes. So when magma is intruding, it causes rocks to fracture and break. And when they fracture and break, or they go like this, they resonate, and the whole mountain goes hum. And was discovered in late 80s, early 90s when that was discovered or hypothesized to be magma intrusions. And so I think it was in Ecuador, maybe Peru, somewhere in South America. There was a conference of all these volcanologists, and this guy presented a paper saying, hey, when you see this hum in a seismograph, that's magma intruding, and that means the volcano may erupt. And all these other geologists like, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about. And this one geologist who was like, screw you, was like, hey, we're going to go up and take a tour of this summit of this volcano at the caldera. And he's like, yeah, don't go there. Don't do it. And other geologists were like, fuck you, we're going anyway. And they go up there, and the mountain erupted all over them. And that was basically the hypothesis in real life. So that's one of the great experiments, is putting your life on the line because you don't believe somebody's hypothesis. Yeah, so thank you, Jake. Oh, I'm mixing up Toba and Tambora. There we go. Jake's correcting me. Thank you, Jake. Toba is a supervolcano. Tambora is the one that erupted in 1815. I'm always gonna get that stuff back asswards. Thank you, Jakey. Correcting me along the way, Houston. Along here, way here. This is from Jill N. Hey, Houston. You told us many ways the world can end by natural disaster. What keeps you positive, and where will be the safest place to live? Man. I don't know why I'm so positive. I basically just kind of accept the fate that when nature strikes, it's kind of out of your hands. At least with things like hurricanes or big storm systems, you can kind of see them coming. It's the ones that come from outside that you really have no chance for. Like earthquake, don't see it coming. Landslides, probably don't see it coming. Tsunamis, may not have the chance to see it coming. Supernova, Betelgeuse going supernova, that's 500 light years away, absolutely just stripping us of all of our DNA with a neutron flux. Might not have a chance to see that coming. So, I don't know, it's kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'm powerless against that stuff. If you've ever been like absolutely just hammered by a big ocean wave, you know how fragile you are and how big and powerful the earth can be. And you just kind of, I don't know, you go, I'm not all that. The safest place to be, I mean, you got Hurricane Alley. Like in the United States, you have Hurricane Alley. You've got Tornado Alley. You've got the hurricane coasts. You've got crappy winters in the Midwest, in the Northeast. You have earthquakes and tsunamis and volcanoes along the west. I don't know if there really is a safe place to be. You just kind of adapt to whatever, we don't have storm shelters here in Washington because we don't really get tornadoes. But then again, in the Midwest, you don't have buildings that are built for earthquakes. So pick your poison. Which one do you want? When I was living in Hawaii, where my buddy Jake is, Leaky Mountain there, we got so used to earthquakes that they happen, I'd feel like 2 or 3 of them a week. It was weird. And every once in a while you go in like, whoa, everything's moving around. Okay, that was like 30 seconds long. It's got to be a 7 point something. And we'd all rush to the computers to figure out exactly what size they were. But, if you live in New York and you feel an earthquake, it's going to freak you out for a long time. If you live in Southern California and you feel an earthquake, you're like, meh, wasn't big enough for me to care about. So it's all about perspective, I think, in that case. Alan S., yes, Google Earth. I like when I watch you use it, because when I do it, I just see cool wiggly lines. There you go. All right. I have to scroll back up here because okay, that's the Nick question. Oh man, I'm so far behind. Oh goodness. Elijah Litters Monroe asks, "Hey Houston, what is the significance of today's low volume? Could it operate as an incentive for a whale to make a large purchase and trigger a call?" I don't know. We had in April, we had a whole bunch of low volume days. This past month, since that pop we had in the beginning of June, has been a lot of low volume days. I think they're using the low volumes specifically to, well, it's not that the volume's low, it's that they're pushing so much of the volume on the dark pools that's not being represented in the exchange. And that's deflating the price because it's reducing the effective buy pressure. And the hedge funds will trade back and forth and drive the price down even more in the dark pools, so that when we do make these purchases, we're not being told what the actual price is. So it's I think that's what we're seeing with those low volumes. Yeah, so that's what I think. We may see. I mean, I would love to see some whale just go YOLO and just dump a bunch of money into the market and just push a squeeze. That would be hilarious. If I were worth $200 billion, Bezos, Musk, why not drop $1 billion on GME and see what happens? That'd be worth the experiment. I mean, hell, I've dropped more of my income on GME as a ratio of my income than they have on any of that stuff. That'd be so funny. Why not? Why not for a laugh? Go down as immortal. But I don't think they're going to do that personally. They might talk. We may see Elon Musk talk big, but I don't think he's actually going to put his money in it because, he's just pump and dumping crypto at this point. Okay. Tommy Berman says, Wealthsimple makes money off conversion rates, not payment for order flow. Okay, because I wasn't sure exactly how Wealthsimple operated, but then there's people also trashing it in there. Board Gamer says, watching with my 6-year-old doesn't believe I can talk with you. Would you mind saying hi to her? Lila Noorani. Hi, Lila. You're welcome. Board Gamer is talking to me via words he wrote on a screen that I am reading. All right. Stephen Latham, did someone else pick up the West Christian GoFundMe lawyer? I think the original one got canceled. Would you helm a new one? No. I mean, I do think that there needs to be, there probably needs to be some sort of civil suit to force the DTC to open up their books, to show us what is inside those computers and who has what shares. And if so, it should probably be a class action suit. I mean, I can be the what do they call it, the lead plaintiff in that case. Sure, why not? But I don't think I'm the one to organize that. I mean, in my cases in court history is someone sues me and I got to figure out how to deal with it myself, which I've done an okay job representing myself so far. Not the best, but better than most. But I think a class action suit is the way to go. And the class action suit, for some reason, they're going to sue GME and AMC, and I still can't figure out why. I think the lawsuit needs to go against the DTCC for allowing this manipulation and not operating the market in an honest way. So that's what I would do, because what everyone needs is to see the books of the DTCC and not to give in to a settlement, because the DTCC will be like, hey, here's $1 billion, shut up and go away. The key is to say, no, show us the books. And then they're going to be like, oh, it's going to be, we if we show them to you, you got to sign this NDA that says you're never going to tell anyone about it. And you got to say, no, make it public. So that's how I feel should happen with if anything happens. The DTCC has remarkably gotten away with never revealing those books and never having to reply to a subpoena to reveal those books. Okay. A couple of volume questions. I think I answered that one already. Well Simple. Another more guys are chatting about Well Simple now. All right. Matt Coors got banned. Lewis Steely just said, "Did you cover Matt Coors getting banned? I'll watch the beginning later if you did." Oh no, that's news to me. I didn't hear that at all. I know that Masked Investor got banned in the middle of his show last Friday, and had to fight and got his channel back. But he's like literally in the middle of a show and just poop. They just turned him off for like violations, and they said it's because he was talking about fantasy football, which is like, what? How is that a violation of your terms of service? I don't know. But as somebody who got his Twitter account deleted over a Putinesca joke, sometimes mass reporting works. And I think I probably got mass reported for some reason, and my Twitter account vanished. So I wouldn't doubt if there's organized attacks on some people who talk about these things. But I don't know what reason Matt Coors would have gotten banned for. So if anyone knows, send me a link to an article and I'll check it out. I hadn't heard that. Okay. Big mean man asks, bruh, why you got the fly shirts on all the time though? Because I have hundreds and hundreds of shirts. People see a crazy shirt, they go, Houston wants that shirt, and then they buy it and they give it to me. It's the craziest thing. My mom at one time had like 20 coffee mugs from around the world, and then all of a sudden her friends were like, Abigail really likes mugs. And they went, and every time they went on vacation, they'd buy her a mug. And all of a sudden she's like, I got this giant mug collection and I don't want any of them, but people keep buying them for me. I want the shirts. I will take any and all shirts and wear the heck out of them. This is a pineapple connection shirt, name of the company, and also covered in pineapples. That's some cool patterns. They're great cheap shirt. If you're going to go entry level Hawaiian shirt, pineapple connection is the way to go. Steve Snyder. You sir are legendary. Keep up the excellent work. Oh, thank you, Steve Snyder. Thank you for that. The man, the myth, the legend, the shirt. There was someone that was saying they know if they've seen a video before, if they recognize the shirt or not. That's kind of how I guess I'm keeping track of all this. All right. Number Letters also asks, can this continue for more than 2 years? I assume you're talking about the squeeze. It can, but it's in the best interest of the government to have it happen sooner than that so that they get maximum 37% capital gains on all of us for short-term investments. If it goes longer than a year, then it's all considered a long-term investment and they only get like 10 or 15% out of us on taxes. So they lose a lot of money if the SEC lets this thing go on. Okay. Let's see here. Questions. Someone's asking about, Aaron Wirtz is asking about NSCC 803. What are your thoughts on it? Okay, which one was 803? 803 is the one that passed with Rule 5, right? Oh, I'm going to get them all wrapped up in my head. Sorry, I have to do a quick search because I can't remember which exact one 803 was, because there's 803, there's 831. Well, they have to make them, they just call them like the Bubba rule and just go with there. NSCC 803. SFT clearing service. That is the Oh goodness. All right. Sorry, it's small writing on this one. Oh, this is going along with Rule 10, I believe. So it's creating a way for clearing of uh, liquidity drains. So clearing the assets, I believe, if I read this one right, clearing the assets of entities that are going to be liquefied. They absolutely just drained of their assets, and doing so softly and allowing sort of people to come in and bid, I believe. Is that what I'm thinking? Or am I getting that confused with 007? That's the line broker to broker, client to client. I know, isn't it great watching somebody read their phone on? It's like having dinner with me. I'm just gonna sit at the restaurant and read my phone all night long and not talk to you. Oh, the writing's so small. Trying to find the juicy bits here. I'm gonna have to dig deeper into 803 because I haven't. Transfer fees, $99 per share. All right, sorry, bud. I'm gonna Aaron Wirtz. I'm gonna have to dig deeper in that one because I'll have to read more of that tonight and go deeper. Because if I spend the entire 2 hours going through like 80 pages of, 346 pages of documents, that's not gonna be fun for anybody. But I think that has to do with instead of selling that stuff, that they give a loan, and it ties in with 010, and so they give a loan for those shares rather than selling them on the market to drop the price. BlackRock, what are your thoughts on timing when Ryan Cohen will yeet the DTCC in the entire market? Can't wait. This idea is ingenious. I heard some mumblings about that the combination of the NFT and showing that the DTCC had allowed for so many naked shares to be created and to not be bought back will give Ryan Cohen the opportunity to say, hey, take my shares out of your computer. You don't get to have them anymore. And would have a different clearinghouse or maybe become self-clearing for some reason. That would be pretty awesome because it would give them an incredible ability to control who has their shares and who's shorting them, essentially. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Ryan Cohen is approaching this whole thing from a complete like Zen warrior state. He's like, okay, I see the battlefield. I understand your techniques. Now, how do you like my tiger technique? And going from there. It's pretty interesting to watch. I mean, they're coming up with things I never would have thought of, and they've got like a whole brain trust of, I don't know, sci-fi villains in there working on it. Okay. Mic needs to be closer. Am I not? Do I need to be closer to this microphone for you? Okay. Sorry. I move it out of my way. I have to get up from my chair, and then I don't move it all the way back to the correct spot. So, is that better for you guys? All right. Hey, monkey butt. Hey, come on. Get up here. Quit licking your hoo-ha, because that's all I can hear is you just going to town on yourself, and I get jealous now. Yeah. Shh, I'm doing a radio show, buddy. Okay. Let's see here. Does Virtue bleed like Citadel? No one talks about Virtue, and they have a ton of shorting as well. I mean, there's Susquehanna, there's Citadel, there's Melvin, there's 8 million short hedge funds we don't even know the names of that are all doing this. There's not really 8 million. There's probably 100, maybe 60, somewhere around there that are shorting this stuff like crazy. And we'll see them all slowly disappear. We'll probably see, my guess is we'll probably see the funds that are outside the United States get get margin called first before the ones inside the United States, because foreign regulators just happen to be better at that stuff than the U.S. is. So, if we see a whole bunch of foreign liquidations and a whole bunch of foreign margin calls and a whole bunch of foreign hedge funds close their doors, then we're starting to get on the right track. That's what I think. All right. Tim Dorn, have you ever heard of The Secret, a Treasure Hunt? Just started looking into it. Looks interesting. I have not. The Secret, a Treasure Hunt. On the list it goes. The Secret, a Treasure Hunt. All right, I'll have to look that up. Buy the dip. Placeholder dividends. Eric asked, do you think Neurolink can help someone with Asperger's? I have no idea. The only therapy I've read about that actually helps people with Asperger's or autism in general is fecal transplants. You want to see some crazy stuff? Google search Arizona State University fecal transplant autism. They had a group of, I don't know the exact number, I'll say 40 people that had severe autism, and 80% of them got fecal transplants from healthy individuals and showed like no sign of autism afterwards. Absolutely mind-blowing. The relationship between irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, and other IBS, things like that, and autism is really, really high. So a lot of people who are on the autistic spectrum also have incredible gut problems. And there's some sort of link there between mind and body. And so the hypothesis of this group at Arizona State was, hey, let's fix the gut problems of all these people that have autism. And, I think every single person had a reduction in autistic symptoms, and 80% of the ones that had severe autism either had mild or no autism afterwards. Absolutely crazy research. So I have no idea about Neurolink and whether that will help. But if anything, like not having to have gut problems and poop yourself all the time, it's got to be wonderful for your system anyway. So I'd look that research up. It's nuts. Fecal transplants sound gross, but they really help people. I got salmonella. I worked at Pizza Hut in 2004 while I was in college, and Buffalo Chicken Pizza gave me salmonella, and I lost 45 pounds in 4 days. Absolutely just destroyed me. I was down to just this tiny little rail and the praying mantis stick figure. And the Cipro regimen and whatever the other antibiotic they gave me just cleaned me out. I had no ability to digest food for like 2 years. I basically ate just like yogurt and drank acidophilus milk. And, I could like eat a sandwich and 30 seconds later just fart an entire sandwich out of me. It was awful. But, had the ability to like, stick something up the old backdoor liquidation there, that could regrow all that gut flora that helps you digest food and maintain like a healthy gut. Would have been amazing. So it sounds gross, but really it helps a lot of people. You get someone else's dookie shoved up there, and it helps blossom the good old healthy gut flora. Most people have their gut flora is more similar to like their mom than someone they've been living with for 40 years. It's pretty crazy. So like oftentimes what you're born with is what you got, and that's the system you have. So yeah, look up that research. Arizona State University, fecal transplant, autism. It's a wild read to see the results of that study. Okay. Did I miss something from Snake Griffin? I'm not seeing. I'm sorry. Where are we looking here? Oh, message got deleted, so I don't see it. Sorry. Okay. Brendan Rich, how many shares are required for 1 million attendees? If you do it right, 1 share. That's kind of where we're leaning if we go for infinity squeeze here. $1 million a share shouldn't be a big deal for some people. Dave Morgan, Houston, what do you think about the parabolic chart bounce theory related to AMC? Thoughts? Happy birthday. Like I said, I'm not a chart guy. I'll have to read up about the parabolic chart bounce theory, but I think right now it's doing this. That's what GameStop is doing. GameStop is like, 350. Oh, down 150, 350, 150, 350. We're going to go back to 150 again. And it's just going to keep cycling that way because there are hedge funds and there are day traders who are making a fortune off of that cycle. I mean, if you can buy a stock at 160 and you know you're going to be able to sell it at 340 a couple months later, and then a month after that, buy it at 160 again, sell it at 340, you can make a lot of money, especially if you've got a lot of cash to play with. So I wouldn't doubt if we see big short attacks when it gets close to 350 and they short it back down to 150, they pay off their obligations, they make 50% on their money. I think there's a lot of groups that are probably doing that. At the same time, when the price gets too high, I think we're seeing a lot of naked shorting to drive the price down, because if the price gets too high on GameStop, the margin is just huge. So I'll have to check out the bounce theory specifically related to that. Okay. Peter Joy says RN shortages are only going to get worse. For those who don't know, RNs are registered nurses. I think you guys are having a chat about hospitals right now. My mom's an RN. She retired, 2 years ago? How long ago? 2 years ago? And during COVID, the hospital's begging for her to come back. She's like, I'm in my 70s. I've got an autoimmune condition. I am not going to go back to a hospital to die in 10 days from COVID. So no, I'm going to stay retired. There's a huge orange shortage. There was orange shortage to begin with, and then there's a ton of burnout for healthcare professionals after dealing with COVID for the last year. They're like, I need to step away. I can't do this. A lot of them have a whole bunch of trauma, and they just, the human psyche can only take so much. We put so much on these healthcare professionals. Hey, you have to show up to work every day, work 15-hour shifts every single day. You can't go home. Your coworkers are dying. The janitors are dying. All your patients are dying. We need somebody in here to do your job, and it's just a lot that got put on them. And so a lot of people left the profession. And the boomers are aging, so we need more and more healthcare professionals, and people just aren't able to fill in. A few years ago, when there was that big RN shortage, they started advertising to folks who are registered nurses from other nations and getting their credentials transferred. So we had a huge influx of nurses from like the Philippines, from Thailand, from other places in East Asia, and we may have to do that again. We may have to start looking for help from outside the country. We have shortages all across the board. We've got shortages in restaurants, and we got shortages for labor for working on farms. Some of that has to do with the fact that we closed the borders and we aren't letting migrant laborers in. It used to be you go to a kitchen at a restaurant and 75% of the staff was Hispanic. And now you go to a kitchen and there's no one from a Latin country there, because they all got kicked out, or they're like, what, screw America and the racism, and they left. We have food rotting in the fields because we don't have the migrant laborers there to pick it. A few years ago, Georgia cracked down on migrant laborers and then lost like $31 billion in crops because there was no one left to pick it. And they're like, that was... Why is no one picking food? Because Americans won't do it. It's obvious they won't. So there's shortages all across the board. And I think one of the things about COVID is, A, we lost, close to 1 million people. B, a lot of people realize that childcare is so expensive that it's cheaper for a spouse to stay home and take care of those kids and figure out another way to grow their income. And third one is, a lot of people figured out what they actually wanted to do with their lives and moved on. and found a new role and realized that the dead end job that they were working before isn't the job they wanted, and they could do something else. And they used this past year to either develop a new skill, find a new niche, open up a business, do something else with their lives, and or go back to school. A lot of people went back to school because if you're working, you're not necessarily to work. If you're going to school, you're not necessarily working a full-time job. And yeah, so we're going to see shortages for a while until we figure out our immigration and we figure out how to entice people into new roles. You got to pay them. If you're in this economy, if you're not willing to pay, somebody living wage, they aren't going to work for you. Okay. Get Real says, damn, all mom and dad stay busy. Well, technically, my dad stayed busy. There's 3 moms in my family. Dad was always busy. He just kept getting married and making more babies. And there's one adopted, so that's from a different family altogether. Kelly Potter asks, if the U.S. economy crashes, how will it affect us in Canada? P.S. Displaying upside down pineapple means you're a swinger. Just saying. Well, what's it mean if they're all upside down and right side up? Anything goes, baby. Well, the U.S. is Canada's largest trading partner, and Canada is the U.S.'s largest trading partner. So if the U.S. trips and eats a whole bunch of dirt, Canada probably will follow suit. Canada, a lot of your economy is based on resources, so mining and hydrocarbons. So if you lose access, you lose market for a lot of those raw materials, that's big time trouble. At the same time, though, you do have a lot of Chinese coming in and trying to buy up a bunch of those resources. There's constantly attempts to build, coal facilities that can fill up ships of coal and send them to China. The Chinese need tons of copper, need lumber. So that's probably going to be Canada's saving grace, is being able to export to the east with that material. But right now we have huge problems with the stupid tariffs that Trump put in, the trade tariffs. I mean, a lot of the inflation that we've seen in products are because there's tariffs across borders with our trading partners and our allies. We've putting tariffs on cars, on wood, on steel, on all these things, and it's making construction costs and manufacturing costs go through the roof for both sides because there's no free flow of materials. So I think it's imperative that the Biden administration finally do something about these stupid tariff wars that we got into a few years ago. So, okay. Kungmin Yang, I will donate 5% of my profit to kidney stone treatment study. Awesome. I mean, my dad was driving with a friend, got into kidney stone and passed out at the wheel, and his friend basically had to guide the car to the hospital. My dad must have been 45 when he got that kidney stone. I fortunately have avoided that so far, but that might be because I don't hit the sauce. But my friends who have gotten kidney stones so far, I do not envy them. I don't wish it upon anyone. Yeah. Nellie Bly. Oh, Kelly Jenkins put it in there. Thank you, Kelly. Nellie Bly. That's the name. Undercover in a psych ward. So that the woman who was a reporter went undercover for some New York paper that I think is now defunct. And Pulitzer, I think, was her editor. And he's the one that sent her undercover to figure out what was happening inside of these mental health hospitals. Thank you, Kelly. I knew somebody would put it in the chat there about you. So your siblings are also 8'3" from Tyler Semby. I'm only 6'4". I'm not 8'3", but I am the tallest. While I may have siblings smarter than me, I am the tallest. And if we were to get into a WWE cage match, I think I could beat them all. Royal Rumble. Wade Kids Royal Rumble. I think I got this one. Okay. All right. William Morgan, after January meme stocks spike, OTC spiked the first week of February. I tried warning people, but nobody listened. They didn't sell. The stocks crashed in March. Yeah, I think the OTC is like the secondary squeeze. Is it will have the stuff in the general market, in the major markets, go whoop and explode, and then there'll be sort of an aftershock in the OTC as a whole bunch of covers have to be made on those as well, because if you're getting margin called, you're getting margin called. That's what's happening. That's what's gonna happen. When was the last time it erupted? I think you're talking about Yellowstone. I think Yellowstone last erupted 600,000 years ago. And the ash fallout from it basically covered a third of North America in like a foot of ash or more. It's pretty nuts. Okay. Start taking Spanish classes. Fee rhymes with tree. You've been trying to ask a question? I'm sorry. If I see your question in there, pop it in. That's the first time I've seen you. There it is. Oh, there it is. The question: do you have any opinions on Bruce Cathy's book, The Earth Grid? I have not read The Earth Grid, so I don't have any opinions on it. I need a new sheet of paper for my my list here, my messy list. Bruce, what's the name? Bruce Cathy. Earth Grid. All right, add that to the reading list. I'm not sure when I can get to it, but we'll put it on the list, and it'll probably end up on a shelf behind me when I'm done with it. Okay. Can we get lessons on space volcanoes? Volta Vin. To an extent. The volcanoes exist in different ways and different moons and planets. So we've got, I can't remember which moon it is. It's not Miranda. Is it? It's one of the moons of Neptune, I believe, where we see evidence of geysers blasting out through the ice. Oh, the name is totally escaping me. If I had my slideshow for my planetary sciences class, I'd be like, ugh, this one. But we see like evidence of geysers bursting through some of these ice ball moons. Moons like Io, Europa, and so on. They get tidal forces that kind of pull on the shape of the planet, and that keeps the inside hot. And as a result, they'll have volcanic eruptions. You can Google cool images of volcanoes erupting on Io that Cassini and other probes have taken pictures of. On Venus, it's because the whole planet is so hot. It's just a giant molten goo ball with like essentially pudding skin around it. And that pudding skin is just kind of floating around on this goo. And there's volcanoes that erupt constantly from that. On Earth, we have a moon. So we do have some tidal forces working on that. B, we've got a pretty large molten core under a lot of pressure. And there's a lot of radioactive decay going on, of tritium decay in the magma. So there's a whole bunch of radioactivity inside that magma chamber, keeping it hot for long periods of time. And it's a sizable planet, so it's under a lot of pressure. And then we have plate tectonics. And the plate tectonics are different than that of any other body in the solar system. So on the Earth, we have the lithosphere moving around as a result of these convections happening inside the Earth. And the plates will either move apart or smash together. And when they smash together, if they're kind of similar, like the two continents smash together, they make big mountain range. If they're dissimilar and one's denser than the other, the denser one slides underneath. So in the case of the Juan de Fuca plate off the coast of Washington, Oregon, and California, and North American plate. The North American plate is a lot less dense than the oceanic plate, and so when they collide, the oceanic plate dives underneath, and so that's that plate diving underneath. It superheats and generates a bunch of magma, and you get volcanic ranges like the Cascades, or where the Pacific plate is diving underneath South America, you get the Andes, or where the Pacific plate is diving underneath Asia, you get Japan or the Philippines and places like that. So those volcanoes kind of work on the plates on that convection cycle. I would love to see other planets and moons someday, but I don't think in my lifetime I will ever get to see an up-close image of a volcano on some other alien world. Who knows? Maybe they'll give us some sort of immortality pill and I'll finally get to see it. But yeah. Vinny Crypto Killer asks, do you crypto? And if so, what is your favorite? I essentially have gotten out of crypto in the near term. When I read about the fraud of the US dollar Tether coin at the end of May, I was like, get out. Because 80% of trades done with Bitcoin are done using US dollar Tether coin. US dollar Tether coin was a $59 billion Ponzi scheme, and they don't have anyone's money. So if you try to redeem those US dollar Tether coins, they only have enough money for 3 cents on the dollar. It's just $59 billion just gone. And that's the week we saw a huge drop in the price of all the cryptos across the board. And so I'm just out for now. The only thing I've done is I invested a few $100 into some really undervalued shit coins, because for a while the hedge funds were causing these random coins to spike. And so I have like, I don't know, 50 million Shiba Inu coins, and just to see if they ever push it and make it spike out of randomly, because, you know, get a few $1,000, why not? But for the meantime, I don't have any investments in crypto beyond that at the moment. Alan S asks, after the squeeze and we all get paid, have you put any thoughts into what ripples this would cause through our culture, economy in the future? I have a little bit. I think for one, we will probably see a new housing spike, because a lot of people that are invested in this don't own homes and they want to own homes. We will probably see car sales go up. We'll probably see medical debt vanish. We'll probably see student loans paid off. And there'll be a new upper middle class that didn't have access to this stuff before that formed. And I hope everybody is learning through this whole process about safe long-term investments, letting your money work for itself and things like that. So people just don't blow it all on, hookers and blow. There'll probably be some of those guys that go, woohoo, and it's all gone 6 months and they'll have had a hell of a time. More power to you. But I do think that long-term, the ripple effects from this is going to be a lot more serious regulation of the market in regards to closing loopholes that get exploited. Because every time we have a market catastrophe, it's because some loophole got exploited. When it was the .com bubble, the loophole was the magic of the IPO, and everyone's IPOs are everywhere, are doing initial public offerings. Oh, and everyone's billionaires and millionaires and trillionaires and whatever. And then when they realized that any old dumb idea wasn't worthy of its own initial public offering, the entire .com bubble just went bloop and disappeared. People realized that mycaddy.com was stupid, and that I can't remember all the names of the other groups. There are all so many out there. So there's that. And I think we're going to see a lot more clamping down on those loopholes that happened. In 2008, we had the loophole of securitizing mortgages, like dividing them up and clumping together and selling them as bundles. And, a whole bunch of toxic mortgages got put in with the good mortgages and basically poisoned the entire batch. This time around, it's the naked shorting. Naked shorting is finally catching up to the rest of the market, and that's going to be its downfall. Probably that in corporate debt too, because corporate debt is also a big horrible thing. So I think we're going to see a lot more enforcement of this stuff and a lot stricter enforcement, and I hope to see a lot more pain inflicted on those that violate. If we have someone naked shorts, they shouldn't. The fine shouldn't be like a slap on the wrist. It should be, hey, you naked short that share. You failed to deliver. You now owe us 200% on whatever the value of that share was, to make it absolutely impossible for them to get away with it. It shouldn't just be a cost of doing business. It should be absolutely painful. So that's the stuff I see in the future there, Alan. Oh, and of course the chat just reset again. You gotta get all the way up here. Dan Kwan, so your catcher in high school is physics PhD. He did chemical engineering PhD. The Mountain Conference must have been fun for infielders. Yeah. There were some good brains on that team, I think. Yeah. When I started playing in college, it was me on the math and physics side, then a whole bunch of like business majors, and not to put business majors down too much, but you guys aren't the cream of the crop. I'll tell you that much. You majored in business because it was the easiest freaking degree you could possibly get, and gave you the least amount of classes, and buy low, sell high, supply and demand. And you're done. There you go. There's your entire business degree. Congratulations. And I'm gonna get business majors in the chat like, fuck you. Making fun of business majors is my favorite pastime. KJS saying Kentucky is safe. Yeah, you guys aren't tornado alley. I know Tennessee gets a lot of tornadoes. I haven't heard about Kentucky getting tornadoes. Your winters aren't too heavy. Your summer's gonna be pretty warm, I take it. Yeah. So I think you're doing all right. So 8:12. Holy crap! I've been going for 2 hours already. Let's go another 15 minutes here if I can. And yeah, it's I'm a bit behind. I'm totally behind on these. I'm sorry. Try to catch up as much best I can. Sophia rhymes with T. Is this about Matt Kors? His account was just vaporized. It's crazy. Matt Kors has like 1 million subscribers. That's a bunch of money that makes YouTube. I wonder what on earth could have happened to make someone at YouTube go delete. Yeah, so I have no idea. I'll have to figure out what happened there. Charles K says something about the Delta variant that got mentioned that caused it. I don't know. So, yeah. Matt dressed up as Karate Kid, and that's what got him banned. All right. Yeah. Uncle Lou hates pineapple. Well, sorry, man. Pineapple's friggin' delicious. I will die on that hill. When I was living in Hilo in Hawaii, we had this railroad easement that went past the house, and it had 77 pineapple plants in it. Bunch of white pineapple. Holy moly, so good. And we do what we called AA meetings, alcoholic astronomer meetings. We'd have parties at our house every Friday. And I'd grill up this Polynesian marinade, basically honey, garlic, soy sauce, and a little bit of like balsamic. You marinate it for like a day on a steak, grill it up, grill it with some pineapple, throw on some rice. So good. And you just pull the pineapple right out of the yard, chop it up, throw it in the grill. Oh man, it was awesome. I love pineapple. I'm drooling again. I got from one of the viewers when I was talking about how my favorite food is Jamaican curry. He sent me a whole bunch of spices and link for making my own. So I'm gonna have to, when I have a night free, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of Jamaican curry, and then maybe I'll have to do, what's that weird Korean thing where everyone like eats in front of each other on a screen, and it became like this weird fetish. Maybe I'll eat some goat curry for everybody, and I'll get a whole bunch of Korean viewers. They're going, oh, goat curry, eat more. Put it bigger spoonfuls, eat more. Oh, Jason Busher sending me a shirt and Lake Michigan treasures. Oh, thank you, Jason. I greatly appreciate it. All right. Okay. Black Seal 2020. Do you have any relatives or history of relations in Bermuda? Wade is a popular last name. I don't know. The Wades that I'm related to came out of the Savannah area in Georgia, but I'm not sure where they were before that. I do know that Wade came from Old English of Wada, and Wada was sea monster, so that's where Wade's from. And then so there's the Wades, the Birds, the Currys, the Gardners. I'm trying to think of all the ones on my dad's side. Those are all like the Southern debutantes that all got slaughtered in the Civil War. And then on my mom's side is like Germans, Ritters, Klotz. There's Atwood, some English in there. So that's, how they met in the Caribbean. They met in Virgin Islands. That's where they were. All right. Jake telling me that the Pizza Hut that gave me salmonella is not closed. It's closed now, and now it's our buddy Dean's new restaurant. So I'm excited. And when I go to the Big Island to go see everybody for the wedding in September, I get to go finally try Dean's restaurant in my old haunting ground of the salmonella infused Pizza Hut. So I'm pretty stoked. See what Dean's cooking. So if you're in Hilo, go to Puanico Village, go see my buddy Dean's restaurant. I have no idea what it's called, but it's in the old Pizza Hut. And he'll cook you some good food, I bet, because he's a good cook. Dan Summit Houston, what do you say to the people who claim that Apollo 11 happened in a Hollywood studio? Can you debunk that claim? Yes. For one, there's no way without computer animation to generate the gravitational bounce of 1.6G that happens on the moon, even using springs and other mechanisms, because you jump up too fast and you descend at a pace that's not equal to the parabolic curve of something going up and down. They claim that there's no stars in the background, but clearly we've seen images of stars being in the background. What are the other claims they make? That the flag moves. Well, there's no atmosphere on the moon, so therefore there's no drag resistance. So when they put the flag up, and the flag had a wire through the top, because otherwise the flag would just be like this because there's no wind. And so the flag got put up, and it went like this, and it will keep going like that until the friction of the attachments on the flag make it stop. What other things? The fact that we can look through a telescope and see the lunar rover on the surface of the moon, that's a pretty good way of debunking it. We also fire lasers off onto little mirrors that are fire a laser from Maui that hits the little mirrors on the surface of the moon, and we time how long it takes for those photons to hit the mirrors and bounce back, and we can measure the distance the moon is from us. There's lots of ways to debunk people that think we didn't land on the moon. We landed on the moon. We did. I mean, it was absolutely just an incredible feat of engineering and ingenuity, and just huge, just marbles. It's from Das. Great down to earth explain. Thanks for your time. Appreciate. Hi to Monkey Butt. Monkey Butt says hi, right? Just give me the side eyeball. You see that? Look at that side eyeball right there. Look at that. She's like, don't touch me. Thank you, Das. Okay. Ryan says, I'm not sure what's worse, hearing about fecal transplants while eating buffalo chicken pizza, or hearing about buffalo chicken pizza causing salmonella while eating buffalo chicken pizza. Uh, sorry, it's late night meals for some of you. All right. Fee rhymes with tree. What are our options to store attendees' wealth once we get our MOAS tendies? Are any banks and stocks going to be safe after the MOAS and market correction? I think so. I personally plan on taking that win and buying the Dow, because the Dow will probably dip during that, and getting a screaming deal on, your Amazons, your Microsofts, your General Electrics, your Fords, your Boeings, your all your blue chip stocks, and also investing into like index funds, your Vanguard funds, the SPY, things like that, and investing in a healthy split of mutual funds, your safe mutual funds, your high yield mutual funds, your in betweens, and just kind of get the nice spread, and getting dividend stock, and then if you get enough win from the MOAS, you can turn your brain off. Let your money work for itself, and go enjoy life, or do what it is you've always wanted to do, or start the charity you've always wanted to do, or take up the hobby you've always wanted, or travel to the places you want to see, and just live the life of that trust fund kid that you've always been like, that guy just wastes his time. All he does is just like smoke pot and sit on the couch and go get tacos. Well, maybe you want to do that too. I don't know. But that's the goal, right? To be able to do what you want, and not have to concern yourself with, are the bills going to be paid? Do I have to get to work on time? Who cares? The only thing that might matter is you have to go catch your flight. I got to wake up early to go fly to the Seychelles and hang out with Russian supermodels. I don't know, but that's yeah. That's kind of how I see where my money's going when it's all said and done. Sorry, I am like 30 minutes behind. I'm trying to catch up here. Jonathan K says, Houston, can you please explain your exit strategy? Yesterday you said you would sell before the peak because the computers will stop buying at some point. TMI, Matt, Trey all say to sell after the peak. Which is it? My philosophy is I'm not going to miss out on this because I got too greedy to retire. So the moment that a price of the share of one share of stock sells for what I can sell everything for and retire comfortably, I'm selling my first share. And then I'm setting my buys for 50% more for the second share, 50% more than that for the third share, 50% more than that for the fourth share, and just working my way up. Because when the trading computers have bought all the shares they need to buy, the buy pressure vanishes, and that curve goes like, whoop, will go like that. When it goes on its way down, it's going to go on its way down really, really fast. Because retail's not buying. It's going to be the trading computers who buy. So it's not like people are going to be going in and be like, oh, you know what? The share price is $500,000 seems like a good buy. I'll buy one. No. The trading computers are buying whatever limit orders exist and whoever's offering on the market at the time, and they're just going to be gobbling it up until they've amassed enough shares that they can close out all these positions, and then the buy pressure is gone, and the price is going to crater so fast. Selling on the way down, I don't think is a viable way to do it. And we're gonna have a lot of peaks and valleys along the way, probably, and we won't know when the absolute peak is. But I would rather, make some millions off my shares than miss it, because I'm not gonna hit the absolute top. Only one person hits the absolute top. Only one. That person is the peak. They're the only one who exists who's going to do it, and the rest of us will have wished we had done it. The rest of us are going to be somewhere inside this, and the amount who are in this zone is not going to be all of us. It just isn't. So I'm playing my game that way. I don't have thousands of shares. I have my small smattering of them. So it gives me the option and the luxury of being able to sell one at a time quite easily. So that's my plan. Yeah, I disagree with the other folks on their exit strategy, because I think if you try to sell on the way down, it's already over. It's done. There'll be no one left to buy it. David F. asks, Houston, what's the best topping on pizza? Does pineapple belong on a pizza? If you like pineapple, and I love pineapple, feel free to put it on pizza. But the best topping on a pizza is an egg. Egg on pizza, holy crap, awesome. My favorite pizza is a date and prosciutto pizza with a balsamic vinegar reduction drizzled on top and an egg in the middle. It is magnifique. Or Tre Bella, whatever they say in Italy. Tre Bella. That's I mean, people in Naples might be horrified. Like, date on a pizza? Put a pickled pear on there. So yeah, pickle a pear and throw it on there. I don't care. But man, mozzarella with balsamic vinegar reduction and an egg and prosciutto. Oh, that's the way to go. That's my game right there. David Morgan, question, could Citadel just declare bankruptcy and get out of their positions that way? No. Because if they declare bankruptcy, then the banks or the prime brokers who gave them the money for margin are now responsible. And they're going to liquidate everything that Citadel has regardless. So, I mean, the only way they can really declare bankruptcy is if they give over all their assets to the people who gave them their margin, and that's it. So they can't get out of it. All they can do is just cease to exist and then get liquidated at this point. Yeah. Yes, and boss is reminding me, none of this is financial advice. None should be taken as much. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is just me yakking about things that I learned about. Angel Flores Jr., 15 million FTDs in metamaterial. What kind of price action could we see? Up. If we get to T35 and they've done nothing nothing about it, and with the CUSIP change, they really can't hide those FTDs. You can't, with the CUSIP change, you can't, take those FTDs and swap them with someone else, because that someone else is still going to get recalled. So I think metamaterial is going to be like how Newegg was after their merger and their CUSIP change. And we're going to see a bunch of forced buying on those shares. Okay. Oh, energy grid. Okay, not Earth grid. I'll be searching the wrong thing. Energy grid. Is that about a global energy grid? Something that Buckminster Fuller proposed in the 1930s. He was like, hey, let's make a global energy grid. Are you guys ready for some Google Earth? Oh boy, here we go. We're going to do a couple minutes of Google Earth here. All right. Screen capture. We go to, open the Google Earth. There we go. There's the Google Earth. There's our little Earth. We click the OK. All right. So, anyone who's ever stared at a map has seen that the Bering Straits is only like 30 miles between North America and Russia. We have the ability to lay underground cable around the world. We've got telecommunications cables all over the place. In the 1930s, Buckminster Fuller said, hey, we got a bunch of power plants over here. We got a bunch of power plants over there. When it's daytime over here, it's nighttime over there, and demand is down. Why don't they send us energy? And when it's nighttime over here and it's daytime over there, why don't we send them energy? And that way, we won't have power plants sitting idle. We'll be maximizing our energy efficiency around the globe at all times. And it'd be fantastic. Problem was that World War II broke out, and then the Big Red Menace took over, and the Cold War, and so none of that stuff happened. But the global energy grid has been a concept for a long time, and it's a way of making energy production really highly efficient. There are some problems, such as this landmass right there that is full of a whole bunch of deregulated morons that run their energy sector, and that is Texas. And Texas is cut off from the rest of the United States' energy grid so that when they get into trouble, no one can help them. And they get into trouble a whole bunch because being deregulated means nobody's responsible for maintaining their infrastructure. And since nobody's responsible for maintaining their infrastructure, nobody maintains their infrastructure. So when it gets too cold, everything breaks. And when it gets too hot, everything breaks. So Texas, don't be like Texas. Be like anyone else that maintains their healthy energy grid. Washington State produces like 300% more energy than we actually use because we are the hydroelectric dam capital of the United States. Same thing with British Columbia, hydroelectric dams everywhere. And so we export electricity all over the western United States, especially to California. California is, and this whole region is under a whole bunch of droughts, so they get energy from places that are under drought and the reservoirs aren't super meager. So yeah, Buckminster Fuller wanted to do a global energy grid 85 years ago. And the reasons for doing it were quite awesome. I mean, you can easily do one all over the Eurasian landmass for sure, because all this stuff is connected and really easy. You don't have to worry about going under oceans and stuff. We can connect all of Eurasia and make it really efficient. The problem probably is having to do with getting treaties together and countries that hate each other's guts to actually like each other. And so, ooh, I'm flying. There we go. There I am. Hi. I'm not sure if what that book is about, but I choose to believe that's what it's about this very moment. Okay. 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 Oops. Chun Hing Go. Thank you so much, Chun. Recent GME filing by CTC LLC and Clear Street. How can their put call options at 20,000? I'm not sure. I haven't seen that filing. I'll have to take a look at that. Sorry, I can't answer it because I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. So, yeah. Why am I always slightly out of focus? I don't know. I have a cheap Chinese camcorder I got off Wish, and that's probably why I'm always out of focus. I should probably buy a nicer camera and have something that's permanently mounted. I'm like always trying to look around the tripod because it's in the way of my monitor. Yeah. So sorry. Chun Hing Gu. I'm gonna have to read about the GME filing by CTC LLC and see what that's about. So I can't answer on that one. Okay. Okay, let's get back up here. Oh man, I blew past my 8:30 time. All right, maybe what the hell? We'll do a 3-hour show today. I'll go all the way to 9 o'clock. Why not, guys? Why not? I got nowhere else to be. I'm a nerd on a Friday night. Okay. Let's see here. BF Marks, hey man, why do you think Torch issued preferred shares to all shareholders on the ex-dividend date? That dilutes the dividend, screws up the squeeze, right? Not necessarily. The preferred shares are non-fungible. So if accounts that are holding synthetic shares didn't get them, there's a forced recall that happens because if someone who generated naked share or borrowed shares does not pay on a PIL, meaning they have to pay the dividend, and right now the dividend is a preferred share of stock, then they get automatically recalled. So I think it's going to cause a squeeze rather than hinder one. And then, metamaterial, to buy back shares, you're going to have to buy metamaterial shares to cover those Torch dividends. And by reducing the number of Torch shares, like basically they took 2 Torch shares and made them into 1 metamaterial, you reduce the float and forcing them to buy back more shares. So Gregory Galicia, where will the U.S. government get the quadrillion dollars to pay for MOAS? They are going to just create them. They will write them and create them out of thin air. Someone hits a button and there's the money. That's how we do it. We can print the money if you own the printers. And if it's going to be quadrillion, I don't know. It'll probably be in the trillions, be my guess, that's going to cost. And, they'll be forced to liquidate the hedge funds. The banks will be crushed down to nothing. And the banks are the ones that will be receiving the money. And the Treasury may do a direct injection of cash, and the Federal Reserve may do their quantitative easing stuff where they just give 0% loans to the banks to make sure they've got enough liquidity to keep a credit crunch from happening and to pay off those obligations. But those are the ways that money gets injected into the economy. Very rarely is it through stimulus like what we've seen during COVID, where they just cut a check to us. That's usually they do it through the banks, because the banks are the rich people, and you can't let rich people become poor people. We don't like that in the world. So we always try to make sure the rich people are the rich people. Okay. Roman Baskin's asking about the July 30th Federal Reserve. That's the Fin Watchdog tweets. I talked about that early in the show. So head back there towards the beginning. I did a whole spiel on that. But I've been chatting with Fin Watchdog for the past week or two about that work that he's doing, and he dug deeper into things that people haven't taken into consideration. So I think it's pretty awesome. I couldn't poke holes in what he was pointing out. So okay. Brandon Rich, yes, we need blockchains so they can't short at all, or naked short at all. All right. Oh. I'm getting low in water, folks. It's going to be a parched Houston here soon. Reagan Farley. Hi, what do you think about hyperinflation after MOAS? How to decide what point is enough to retire on? Thank you. Sorry for spamming you this. No, don't be sorry. Hyperinflation is very real. One of the ways they keep hyperinflation from happening is by giving all that money to rich people. Because what do rich people do with that money? They take that money and then they put it in the Cayman Islands and they forget about it. That's how they work. And the velocity of that cash not entering the market very quickly makes for inflation to not go as fast. If they all of a sudden flooded all of Americans with millions and millions of dollars, the price of everything would reflect that, right? So by giving rich people money they don't need is a way of getting money into the economy without causing inflation, because that money never leaves the rich people. So some of the inflation we're seeing now might be actual inflation, but I think a lot of it has to do with supply chain problems and manufacturing issues. We don't have enough lumber. We don't have enough steel. We don't have enough semiconductors. We don't have enough glass and sand. So a lot of products can't get made. And whether it's a direct result of not having access to those materials or a direct result of not having the labor to get those materials to those who need them, the price on stuff is going up. Like we saw the price on used cars last month go through the roof. It went up like 50% on used cars because people couldn't get new cars. And people can't get new cars because China can't produce enough semiconductors to get to the manufacturers in order to build those cars. So part of the infrastructure bill that is going through the Senate and the House right now is basically as a matter of national security to invest $50 billion in the manufacturing of semiconductors inside the United States to guarantee we have a semiconductor supply. We aren't dependent upon other nations for that supply chain. During COVID, we saw weird things like the Nissan plant got shut down because they couldn't get window wiper motors from a factory in Wuhan. So if you can't wipe windows on a car, you can't sell a car because it's required for cars for sale. And when we have breakdowns like that in this, what's the name of the system? On-demand system. Like, think Cafe Press. Cafe Press doesn't print 8 million hats with your logo on it, hoping you'll buy some. They print it when you order it. A lot of these factories are set up in such a way that they are able to spool up manufacture on a particular, design, die, cast, whatever, and get those products to you as you need it. But if the ships break down, the ports are clogged, the highways are clogged, the the materials and getting to the factory, that whole chain, the supply chain along the line fails. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is not necessarily inflation, but a supply and demand as a result of a lack of access to these materials and goods. So, and we're going to see wages rise as we come out of this pandemic, because it's hard for people to find the labor they need to do the work they need. We see, restaurants all over the place closing because they don't have enough help, or being open, a selected number of days because they don't have enough people to work the restaurant. We see, factories going to 6-hour days because they don't have enough people to work a full shift or 24-hour shift. And to entice people to come work for you, you got to pay them a whole bunch of money. You got to make sure they got benefits. You got to make sure they got free time. And it's really a worker's market right now as a result. So post MOAS, a whole bunch of us nobodies will have a bunch of cash, and there'll probably be a spending frenzy. And there'll probably be a whole bunch of money that had to get printed by the Fed and given out to the banks via quantitative easing, and the banks don't have to just give it back to us. So we might see the price on certain goods go up. We might see, housing prices go up. We might see construction costs go up again because we're like, I'm going to build my castle. Screw you. I'm digging a moat. And, moat costs. Moat costs are going to go through the roof post MOAS. And alligator prices. Alligators to fill your moat also are going to be really expensive. There's going to be a lot of demand for alligators. All right. Let's see here. There's Doss's question. Robin Hood's asking, any thoughts how this will affect Norway, oil countries? So Norway is a fairly small population and a whole bunch of natural gas and a lot of oil. And they benefited most because, unlike the United States, they have their land owned by the public, and they mine that material, they sucked it out of the earth, and they sell it, and that profit goes to the public. Here in the United States, we have millions and millions and millions of square miles of federal land, and what we do is we go, hey, who wants to bid on the oil on this patch of land? And like 2 guys show up and they go, $200. And they get $1 billion of oil out of it, and they keep it, and they go, fuck you, America. And so we don't realize the same benefit of our natural resources the way Norway does. And because Norway has so much crude and natural gas compared to the population, it makes them a very wealthy people overall. It pays for a great social net, safety net, schools, infrastructure. You guys dig tunnels like nobody's business. People can't dig a tunnel in the United States to save their lives. When I went to Norway in 2010 was when they finished the tunnel that under the bay in Oslo, and it's like 4 miles, 8 lanes wide, 2 train cars in it, and it costs $400 million US. At the same time, we're trying to dig a tunnel that's like half the width under Seattle and half the distance, and it's costing us $4 billion. We just don't do it right over here. But how will it all affect Norway? Well, I don't think much at the moment, because you guys are pretty safe with your oil wealth. As long as you diversify your sovereign wealth fund outside of oil and plan for a future that's pretty much oil free, I think you folks will be all right. That's what Dubai has been doing, because Dubai's peak oil is past and they aren't going to have much more. And so they've been investing in tourism and buying U.S. bonds and all sorts of stuff all over the place to make sure their people still have a big old wealth afterwards. I think Norway has to do that. Maybe look across the way at Sweden and see how Sweden does without the huge amount of natural resources you folks have. A lot more industry. Sweden is much more industrial, and so they do that. Okay. Looking for People are like, pineapple on pizza? Jake is agreeing that my house had the best parties. We did have the best parties. I don't know if Jake ever made it to the monstrous crack house Halloween party we had, where I was Teen Wolf. I was both versions of Teen Wolf. I was a Michael J. Fox basketball Teen Wolf, and then over that, at times, I was the Jason Bateman Canadian tuxedo Teen Wolf. And we had a party where, I don't know, 300 or 400 degenerates showed up, and it was on the street in Hilo that around us was nobody. There was like an empty furniture store, empty school, empty insurance office, empty yoga studio, empty doctor's office. There was nobody around, so we could make as much noise as we want. And the cops showed up. And being sober Houston meant I had to go talk to the cops with like fangs in my mouth, dressed as Teen Wolf with my hair all popped up in the air. And they were on one side of the gate, and I was on the other side of the gate. And they're like, "You need to shut this party down and get these people out of here." And I was like, "No. What's going to happen instead is those people are going to stay there because they've been drinking all night, and they're not going to be getting in their cars and driving home. And you are going to go away." And this cop got all mad. He's like, "Do you know the law? I used to be a paralegal. I know the law." I was like, "Here's the law. Unreasonable search and seizure. You have no reason to come in and bother us. That's why you're on that side of the fence, and I'm on this side of the fence. And if I let people go and they get in their cars drunk, that gives you reasonable cause to come in here and bother us. So no one is leaving this party. You guys can hang out there all night until your shift is over, and we're going to stay in here and continue to party." And that's exactly what we did. People were like, "Oh, bro, I need to go home." I'm like, "You're not leaving. You're staying right there. Go find a corner and go to sleep, because otherwise the cops are going to come in and bust this thing." And until like 7 or 8 in the morning, when the cop shift finally got over, all their little cop cars drove away, and they're just hoping to bust a bunch of college kids. And Houston Wade and his pocket constitution never let them. That's why it helps to have a nerd at your party, because it'll let you guys just keep raging all night long. Okay. Oh shoot, sheep ducking cow. I totally forgot to do my homework on the South Sandwich Islands. Ah, crap. South Sandwich Islands, South Sand Islands. So no, you didn't miss the lesson of South Sandwich Islands, because I didn't do one. All right, Monday show, Monday South Sandwich Islands, South Sandwich Islands. We'll get one of those going. Sorry about that. All right. All right. DVS, the moon is getting 4 centimeters further away every year, isn't it? And will one day fly away and doom us all. I heard that somewhere. The moon won't ever fly away. The moon will still be tidally bound with the Earth. It just may get to a point where it gets so far away that the tides don't really do much anymore. And the Earth's rotation will slow down a whole bunch. So we may be locked with one side facing the sun, the same way that one side is facing of the moon is facing the Earth, and we are in a synchronous orbit as a result of that slowing down of our rotation. But that's going to be like billions of years off. The sun will probably have gone red giant and eaten us by then anyway. So yeah, it's nothing's going to happen in our lifetime, or even like 1,000 generations lifetimes from now. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But the moon is drifting away from us, because the moon. I wish I had another ball here, but the moon pulls on the Earth tides, and Earth tides like bend towards the moon, and the tides pull on the moon. And so as the Earth rotates, the tide actually slingshots the moon around the Earth faster and faster. And as it goes faster and faster, it goes to higher and higher orbits. And so as it goes to a higher orbit, the tidal force between the Earth and moon diminish, and the tides get less. So they don't slingshot the moon quite as less. So the moon drifts away now slowly at few centimeters a year. And our tides will get lower and lower as the millennia progress. Okay. Daniel de Oliveira. Oh, sorry, you might be saying that wrong. How do they take off from the moon back to Earth? Why another country has not landed there too? Well, it takes 1/6 the amount of energy to reach escape velocity as it does here on the Earth. So you need a whole bunch of jet fuel. You have a whole bunch of atmosphere to get through on Earth. So it's a lot harder to get from the Earth's surface out of the Earth's atmosphere. On the moon, there is no atmosphere, so you have no drag resistance. All the force you put into the rocket translates into momentum, and you have a very little amount of gravity pulling backwards. So it takes a micro amount of fuel to leave the Earth's orbit as it does to leave to leave the moon's orbit as it does to leave the Earth's orbit. So that's how they do it. They start with a huge rocket on Earth. When everything breaks off and they get around the Earth and they slingshot towards the moon and they land on the moon, it takes a little bit of fuel to slow it down so it doesn't crash into the moon, and then a little bit of fuel to get it to lift off. So there doesn't need to be so much fuel stored in those tanks to land and take off from the moon. And the reason why other countries haven't done it is it's really expensive. We spent 10 years, 400,000 people, and I don't even know what in today's dollars it would be, but it'd probably be the trillions of dollars in today's money to land on the moon. And the Russians just couldn't get their money together. And the Russians beat us in like every single solitary aspect of the space race except for landing on the moon. They got the first satellite, the first creature in orbit, the first human orbit, the first thing to land on the moon, the first thing to see the dark side of the moon, the first thing to land on Mars, the first thing to land on Venus. They had all these firsts, but the one that mattered was the U.S. landing on the moon and being like, America! And then the Russians went, Arr. So that's kind of the story behind it. But now we are going to have the Chinese have a presence on the moon. The Indians and Japanese have formed like an alliance and are having going to have a mission on the moon. We got Bezos. We're going to have probably European Space Agency. Probably Israel's is working on it. Although Israel's first attempt to land on the moon just crashed a whole bunch of tardigrades, little water bears on the surface of the moon because they missed their landing. And so there's a whole bunch of like maroon frozen water bears on the surface of the moon somewhere. But they're all going there because there's so much money to be made. Now that we've got the technology to do containment units for cold fusion, we got to go harvest as much helium-3 as possible, and we will have a new energy source that will take over. And sorry, Norway, once we start mining that helium-3 in the moon, no one's going to want your oil and natural gas anymore. Sorry. So hope you diversify. You still have great landscape. I would love to go visit again. Ben Watson, if we ever terraform the moon to the point of having a large surface water oceans, would the Earth produce wild lunar tides? It would. It would create crazy lunar tides. Although, it's one of those what ifs that like, how would we do it? The moon's so tiny, it really can't maintain an atmosphere. So we have to like somehow add a bunch of density to the moon, like make a really, really, really dense core somehow, inject, I don't know, lead and uranium or something. Because right now the moon's escape velocity is teeny tiny compared to that Earth's. I think the Earth's escape velocity is 11 kilometers per second, which means if I took this baseball and I threw it in the air 11 kilometers per second, it would technically slow down from Earth's gravity, but it would reach infinity. And the moon's is like 1/6 of that to reach escape velocity. So you've got all these molecules that are bouncing off each other in our atmosphere. And some of those molecules, if they're light enough, can be accelerated to the point where they reach escape velocity for the Earth. That's why helium and hydrogen hydrogen will bond with things, but helium will rise to the top of our atmosphere. So if you, let a balloon go and eventually it pops and the helium escapes, or it escapes and you breathe it in and talk funny and it breathe it out, that helium will float to the top of our atmosphere. And when it gets to the top of the atmosphere, it gets excited by a solar ray. And that solar ray can accelerate to the point where it reaches velocities greater than 11 kilometers per second and bounce out of our atmosphere forever. So the moon being much smaller means that things like oxygen, CO2, nitrogen, the very basis of our atmosphere that we live in, reaches escape velocity easily on the moon and just gets blown away by the solar winds. So the moon can't really maintain much of atmosphere. But in a fantasy world where somehow we did have one and there was liquid water on the moon, the tides would be absolutely bonkers from the Earth. They'd be huge and probably terrifying for anyone who lived near a shore on the moon. Equinox Ms. I'm saying that right? Do you collect anything? Comics, figures, etc.? Or is it a book collection behind you? I collect shirts. I got my book collection. I have a baseball card collection from back in the day. I have a pretty good baseball card collection. And I had a gemstone collection until very recently. And now that belongs to a very, very smart, adventurous man from Mississippi. And I now collect regret. I have a bunch of regret that's been collected and stored within me as a result of that incredibly horrible bet I made. Let's see here. Do I have other things I collect? I don't really think so. I think those are my main collections. My most treasured collection, I think, is my shirt collection. I love it, and the shirts that are given to me, every shirt that's given to me, I remember who gave it to me, and well, I shouldn't say that because I have had it where I've opened my door and there's just a bag of shirts and I can't figure out where they came from. I just hope they're not like smallpox blankets. Oh, we're gonna murder Houston with these shirts. But that's yeah, those are my collections. Blue Hefner asks, what is T35 and how many FTDs does Meta have? We don't know how many FTDs Meta has at the moment, but T35, someone posted earlier, was August 16th. I thought it was a week before that, but I can be totally wrong. I think I forgot to include 4th of July in there, so that's probably why it's later. And their FTDs, we know that there's like 15 million so far, but the reporting for the end of June is the only one that's been reported. We're looking for the first week of July to come up next from FINRA and the SEC. So we'll be able to see what those FTDs were like. It was on the threshold list for a while. I don't know if it still is. I haven't looked recently. But I think August should be really interesting for metamaterials as a result. Okay. I got a couple minutes. I can... Louis Seeley's asking, do you think Janet Yellen will get the the debt ceiling raised? I think so. That every time we come around to this and there's a group, usually it's like kind of an extremist wing of the Republican Party. They're like, no more debt. We're going to stop the debt ceiling, blah, blah, blah. And we get something like in 2011, we actually got our debt rating reduced, which caused a nightmare across the market. And then the last minute they approved it. They always approve it in the last minute because they know deep down if they don't, the entire world's economy collapses. The global economy is based upon U.S. debt. That's it. U.S. debt and the U.S. dollar. Anything that will destroy either of those two things just collapses everything. Yeah. So that's. I think Yellen made a good case. There'll be some like poo-poos from certain members of the Senate and Congress, but in the end, they'll barely pass a debt ceiling limit, and that's where we go. All right. And if they don't, Mad Max it. Make sure you got your leather and your spikes. And the sad thing is that my war rig has no engine right now. AAA Motors, you did not respond. So AAA Motors, you should expect to be hearing from a service, from a process server. Okay. Tropical TV, you're asking about the egg on the pizza. Well, if you do it like in a Napolitano wood-fired oven, the oven's like 1,000 degrees, so the pizza only cooks for about 60 seconds. So that 60 seconds on there should make for a nice kind of, semi-liquid yolk, but a cooked egg white. And then you take your scissors and you cut the pizza, and that egg yolk all over everything. Is delicious. So you want a little ooey gooey for that yolk. Okay. Marcos Santiago, why haven't clients pulled their money out of hedge funds like Citadel? They have. I think something like half of the losses that Melvin has had is their client base going, give me my money, I'm gonna kill you, and Melvin going, here you go, billionaire, here's what's left, and the billionaire going, I'm gonna kill you anyway. So a lot of losses for these hedge funds is people pulling their money out. The whole point of putting your money in a hedge fund is to make money, not to lose 50% of your money in a matter of weeks, but by giving your money to a hedge fund. So I do think a lot of the losses these hedge funds have taken is from clients pulling their money out. And they probably have to sign NDAs, not saying like, not admitting who pulled their money out and who are members of these things, because these billionaires, they get reputations to project and to protect, and they can't let everyone know that they lost $500 million on an investment, things like that. Okay. A few rams of trees talking about Bruce Cathy was a pilot who knows odd things, landmarks superimposed on a magnetic grid. Okay, that's what the story's about. I'll have to check that out. Okay, 9 o'clock. I'm gonna do one more question here, and then it's time for me to go get some food, some real food, because a bowl of cereal does not cut it. Especially since I've been talking about. You guys make me talk about food, and then I'm like so hungry. Okay. Where's a good one? Let's get down here. John Croissant, raw egg yolk will give you salmonella. Yes, that's why you cook it for 60 seconds at 1,000 degrees, and then you won't have it. All right. Oh, there's Jimmy D, number one handsome. Oh, you're a classic, Jimmy. All right. Everything boosts my ego. It's having Jimmy tell me I'm so handsome every week. The only people that tell me I'm handsome are like my mom. You're such a handsome boy. helps having some others boost my confidence. Okay. I'm seeing more discussions here. Oh, no, Leaky, Jake was at that party. All right. We got him wasted. Excellent. Okay. Okay, here's the last question of the night. An Nanomoth, that's how you say it. Anonymoth. Houston, how many shares of AMC and GME do you think is a safe amount to accumulate to be able to execute your retirement plan? Well, I mean, it depends. If I can sell a share for like $3 million, then I'm retired, right? And if I happen to be a person in that peak zone that can sell shares for 6 figures, 7 figures, then I can definitely retire. My plan is to sell my first share at $100,000 because $100,000 means I can sell the rest of my shares for that much. If the buy pressure is over, I can just try to sell everything I can. And that's where I'm going from there. That's how my first share will be 100,000, second share will be 150, third share will be 225, fourth share will be 337, fifth share will be somewhere around 500, sixth share 750, and so on. I'm going to try to raise 50% each consecutive share, and then after 6-7 shares, I'm selling them for $1 million if I'm lucky. And so that's what I'm going for. All right. I think I'm out of voice. I am almost out of water, and I want to go get some food. So thank you very much, everybody. I may have a chance to maybe on Sunday do a quick show in the daytime. If not, I'll see everyone Monday at 12:30 Pacific time. So, yeah, there we go. All right, good night, everyone. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Hope you had fun, and continue to be your nerds on a Friday night. All right.